All right, everybody. Welcome to Late Night with Sancho. We are live, and we are live with a guest that I have been beyond excited to speak to. Absolutely great for the opportunity. Mitch Hartwell, a.k.a. Erik Everhard. Welcome to Sancho Live.
I'm pleased to be here.
Kate, welcome. Kate is my special co-host for a few minutes, I guess.
Yeah, what's up?
Pleasure to have you, Kate. Kate, meet Erik. Erik, Kate.
I love the name. I really do. Do you pick your own stage name?
Did I pick my own stage name?
Yeah.
No, actually, it was a buddy of mine. He came up with it, and there's actually a real funny story behind that. But I was a huge gym rat. I used to work. It was my second favorite job up until I started the porno business. I used to work at a hardcore gym in Vancouver, and so when it came out that I had done movies, they were all sitting around and they were thinking like, oh, we got to think of a name, right? And the guy who was the resident drug dealer in the gym came up with my name.
It's top shelf, like easily top 10.
Well, but it was so funny because we're sitting there, right? And literally in 15 seconds, he just blurts out, he's like, Erik Everhard. And then he's like, and because you need the alliteration, and he goes, and I saw your video and your dick was always hard, and then you're blonde, you look Nordic, so we're gonna spell it with a K. I mean, he had all this shit coming out of his mouth in 15 seconds, and we just all of us sat there just like, Jeff, that's brilliant. And that was it.
Now, is there an optional Plan B name, or is that always the name?
What's that?
Now, is that always the name, or was there kind of Plan B and Plan C names? And if so, what are those?
That was it. That was there was only Plan A. That was
so. Let's
you can't top it.
So let's start from the beginning. April 17th, 1998. Walk us through that day, and why is that a memorable day for you?
Because that was the very first day that I worked in the business, and actually, there was a lot of things that culminated to that because, previously I had seen an ad in a local newspaper while I was on lunch break at the massage therapy school that I was attending. And so I saw the ad. I called the company. Of course, they shot me down because, as I know as a professional now, especially back then, 99% of men could not do the job. So they kind of knew that, and they really weren't willing to waste any time or resources on you. So I called them. Of course, they basically hung up on me. But eventually I saw the ad again one day, and I kept calling. I kept calling because I thought to myself, well, geez, I didn't really pursue it that hard. Right. So one day I get somebody new on the phone, and it was the actual owner of the company. And so he said to me, he says, well, how about you come down and we'll take some Polaroids of you and see if you've got the equipment to do what it takes. And, maybe one day, maybe we could find you a job somewhere. I said, okay, great. Well, I'll come on down. So that was April 17th, and I went down to this, it was kind of a seedy area of downtown East Vancouver. And, I remember walking up this big staircase, and there was this metal door, and I bang on the door, and they open it up, and they say, hey, are you Mitch? And I'm like, yeah. And then just plain as day, he just stares me straight in the face and just says, can you fuck a girl for us right now? And I think I must have been just jaw dropped wide open. I was just let out a little like, sure. I was just shocked. I was not expecting that to happen that day. And it just so happened that this actress that I guess they had worked with before, she was hanging out at their studio that day. So they had her there. They had me there. They said, fuck it. We'll see if he's got what it takes. And that was it.
Was there a big part of your book is the mentalness about, don't fuck your mind up before you don't fuck, period, Was there any hesitation mentally, like, can I wait a couple hours? Can I wait another day? Or how willingness were you to just jump in and fuck her?
Oh no, there was no second thought at all. I was like, okay, let's do this. And that was also something interesting because, like when I've thought about all the different mental techniques that I've used over the years, there was never a doubt that I was like, it never occurred to my brain that you wouldn't be able to do it. That was number one. And then, number two, your desire or your horniness has to be at a higher level than your anxiety.
Was that the first time? I mean, I don't want to say the majority of the men, but the majority of the men are going to be uncomfortable with two things. They're going to be uncomfortable with a camera, and they're going to be uncomfortable with other people in the room. I say the majority of the men.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of that pass your mind at all, or were you just like Peyton Manning, focused on a Super Bowl win?
Yeah, it was just like that. I mean, the one saving grace that I had on my side, because I'd never done anything like that, right? The only saving grace was that when I was a kid, in my household, and it's not like my parents were hippies or something, but me and my brother, like, it was just normal. You slept naked, right? So when we were kids, we would just run around the house naked, and my parents like, oh, okay, whatever, right? So I never had that sort of shame about being naked. It was more like, well, I wouldn't do it because you would get offended, but me personally, I didn't give a shit. So that definitely carried over when somebody said, okay, we want you to get naked. I was like, okay.
Are you able to look back at your performance during your first film? You're an expert now. We all know that. You're an expert. What would you grade that first performance looking back at it, and what would you have done to critique that first performance, and how proud of you were that performance, and were you at all certain they're going to call me back? Because they did. They paged you in a couple days after that. But were you a little hesitant? Were you a little like, did I give it my all, or are you just super confident like a robot and just
no. I mean, God, if I was to look back and grade that now, oh Jesus. C-. maybe the Bulgarian judge would give me a B-. I don't know, but
what did you not like about your performance?
Well, there's a lot of things that I learned over the years, positioning, right? Because people have to understand, when you're doing the job, you are trying to present the woman as best as possible. So it's not like it's about me. It's about, okay, how can I show off this woman as best as possible? There's a saying we used to always have, which still rings true today, that the girl sells the movie, the guy sells the scene, right? So, when you kind of unpack that, it's like, well, okay, the buying public, they are, buying the movie, renting the scene, however you want to call it today. They are doing that to see the woman, right? But the difference between the good scene and the great scene is going to be the man that's in it.
You were quoted as saying that scene was just something you want to talk about to your grandkids one day. I did it once. You gotta call a couple of days later, and your life changed forever. How active were you your first year in scene wise?
Oh, well, see, I was still, that first year, I was just working up in Vancouver. So active, I wasn't that active. I think probably I ended up, let's call it, doing maybe like a scene a month for the, because it was this small little Canadian website, right? So I wasn't I wasn't knee deep in the porno world yet. But I would say probably, I probably did between 8 and 12 scenes for them up there. So it's like they'd call me regularly, every 3-4 weeks, and say, okay, hey, come by and do that again. I was like, okay. And then the editor that worked there, he pulled me aside one day and he said, you're really, really good at this. You should consider going down to Los Angeles. You could make a lot of money. And, I had no concept about what that entailed or what a lot of money was at the time, right? Like I was, to me, I was just doing it for fun.
You have an hilarious story about when your mom found out about what you did. I would like you to let us know that story. I enjoyed hearing it the first time. I'm going to love it the second time. You're making good money, but was it always in the back of your head before your mom knew, fuck, she's going to find out eventually, or are you just getting away with it and thinking you got away with it scot-free? And walk us through that conversation and how it went and how shocked were you?
All right. Well, yeah, what's funny, and I remember when I was getting all my NLP certification, we would talk about the human brain. The frontal lobe of the, especially in men, it's not really fully formed until about 27. I don't know if you kind of know that. So, which explains why most young men cannot comprehend consequences. Right? It's why all young men, you do something stupid, you do it in your 20s, and someone could very easily say, well, couldn't you see that was going to be a problem? And most young men, they kind of glaze over and they're like, well, no, I didn't really think it was going to be a problem. That was the same thing, right? There was no part of me that, I just jumped into it and, went down to LA, started. And then it was like, oh fuck, I gotta think of some sort of excuse why I'm here now because I'm no longer at school in Vancouver. So initially, I told my mom that I was on vacation to LA, right? Went down with some friends to California. And then now I'm working, things are going along. I'm like, okay, well now I'm here much longer, right? And so I thought long and hard, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to come up with a job, some sort of plebeian job that I could tell her. And I said, well, I got a job bartending, right? So then that lie, but, already my mom's like, oh, okay. Now, bear in mind, my mother is the sharpest woman that I probably have ever met in my life. Like as a child, I could get away with nothing ever. So anytime that I went out with friends, anytime that I went drinking, my mom knew. Like there was just she was not one of those mothers that you could pull one over or get a fast one by. So again, I get on the phone with her, just a nice, normal, mother-son discussion. We talked on the phone for probably 15, 20 minutes, just normal, like, hey, what's going on? I told her about my day. And then at the very end of the conversation, she just says it like this. She goes, so I hear you're doing movies. and I think my jaw must have just dropped to the floor. And I was speechless, and she just let out one of those, uh-huh. And that was it. She just wanted to let me know that she knew.
When did you know this was going to be a career for you as opposed to just something that you did, 12 times a month or?
Probably it was probably about 6 months in, to being in Los Angeles. Because at that point, things had really picked up steam really fast for me. My very first month in Los Angeles, I did 4 scenes. And then my second month, I did 15. So people heard about me really fast. And back then, the business was a lot different than it is now. It was if you were good, your name would just kind of spread like wildfire. So I started getting all these calls and texts from numbers that I had no idea who they were. And they were just like, hey, we heard you're good. Can you work this day? Can you work this day? And, part of me was thinking about moving back to Canada because it was, I was just alone down there in Los Angeles. And my former roommate in Vancouver, he was a super computer tech guy. He had some of my stuff, and he decided he was going to move down to LA because I was almost thinking about leaving because I was like, well, I'm by myself, I'm all alone here. And then when he decided he was going to come down, I was like, okay, I'm going to stay and I'm going to keep doing this. And then shortly after being in the business down in Los Angeles, I started to work for a major company. I mean, I was working for a lot of major companies, but this one in particular took guys around the world traveling. And I very quickly became one of their crew. That was at the time, that was Anabolic and Diabolic Video. And and then once that started, because very few guys were ever on their roster, they were very unique at the time in that they cared more about the guys they hired than actually the girls, because their scenes would be so difficult that if they did not have the top A-list actors, they couldn't do them. But because of that, they would take care of their actors very well. So they would fly us all around the world, pay for everything, hotels, meals, you name it. We were very well taken care of by them. And that's what led to my first directing gig, because I got an opportunity with them in, I believe it was 2001. And then I shot my first professional video as a director for that company, and then that's what led me down that path.
Now, did you go into this with like kind of like a wish list of, top names that you wanted to fuck, or?
Not really. There wasn't that. I mean, for me, I was actually more stunned because I was an avid porno fan and watcher, and so meeting some of the guys, that was what probably blew my mind. I remember the first time I met the late great John Leslie, because he was super famous in the 70s porno. I mean, the guy was like a god, and at that point he was this old man, but super well respected in the industry. And I remember out of the blue he called me. Actually, his assistant called me and said, "Hey, John wants to meet you. For a casting. Would you be able to go?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, John always had all the talent meet at this place called the Sportsman's Lodge in Laurel Canyon, Studio City area. And I remember when I opened the door to shake his hand, I completely stuttered. Like everything that came out of my mouth was just like, blah, because I was just so nervous at the time. I was like, holy shit. I'm like, this guy is going to hire me. I was pretty blown away. So, but no, there wasn't like a list. I mean,
Had to be a girl that you got. There's Jenna Jameson, there's Tara Patrick, there's BB Jones, who at one point was pretty huge. Was there one that you kind of got a little butterflies in the stomach?
Oh, when I was working with?
When you were told, like, okay, the phone rings and you're being told you're working with this person. Was there one time when you just geeked out, like, okay, this is kind of on my bucket list of, women I want to have?
Yeah.
Throw us who was on your bucket list and throw me how finished that bucket list is.
Oh, well, I would say the bucket list was all finished except for 2 names. So I was supposed to work multiple times with Jenna Jameson, and that never happened. I remember there was an editor at Club Magazine at the time that he really liked me, and he wanted to put us together. And at this time, she was very on again, off again with her boyfriend at the time. So it's like they would split up, and then the guy would go to try and book a photo shoot with us, and then they get back together, photo shoots off. So so we knew each other, but we never worked together. And then the only other one that I would say, there was a Hungarian girl that she had kind of stopped, I think, by the time I started, and she only made a couple trips to America, but her name was Anita Blonde. And if you were to ever look her up, you would understand why she was on my bucket list. She was probably the most attractive woman ever in porno, in my opinion.
I'm Googling it right now.
She's Googling her as we speak.
Yeah,
so,
Anita Blonde.
So I read in your book you were talking about epic fucks. I'm going to call them Hall of Fame fucks, okay? Hall of Fame fucks. Let's hear your top. You want to do top 5 Hall of Fame fucks, and why were those top 5 Hall of Fame to you, of all people? Why was it Hall of Fame to you?
Well, what do you mean specifically? You mean the girl?
You obviously have top 5 Hall of Fame highlights right now in your head. That if you were told, hey, what are your top 5 scenes? Hall of Fame scenes that you would want. I mean, listen, you've won 14 AVN Awards, 23 total porn awards. You've won Best Anal Sex Awards multiple times. What's your Hall of Fame ones? Like, what?
I would probably say if someone was going to say, when I think about probably best scene ever, or
top 3.
Yeah, top 3. Danny Daniels in Dare. That scene everybody still talks about, because that was the week that we started dating. So it was you got a lot of really good chemistry there. Then probably the public scene that I did in the Hero Square of Budapest with Angelina Crow. That was in a movie I produced called As Obsessed Number 3.
Were you fucked in public?
Yeah, it was in a town square with the police watching.
Wow, I was going to ask about the police.
Oh my goodness!
So they were watching the scene happen.
Well, they watched everything lead up to the scene. Once the scene started, they interfered within about 5 minutes. I was arrested.
Now, did you get to come? Now, I think the worst thing ever is about to come and then you get arrested. Is that what happened to you?
Well, yeah, no, we didn't finish the scene there. No, we got busted, and but we got out of there, so it was okay. And then we finished the scene somewhere else. But so that would definitely be the number 2 on my list. And then probably if I was going to say number 3, probably when Vivid hired me to do The World's Luckiest Jock, because that was the last movie of that type that was ever filmed, and that was a huge reverse gangbang that they did. So it was me and 101 girls.
Whoa.
Yeah,
I could get 50 questions on that alone.
Those were some long days. I'll tell you that right now.
What prep what prep goes into a scene where you're fucking 101 women, and what butterflies, if any, were in, and how did you start a scene like that? I'm just curious. Not that I'll ever get a chance to fuck 101 women at once. I'm certain I won't. But
he won't even his whole life.
Right.
Well, I mean, for that day, they would bring them in groups of somewhere between probably 6 and 8. So it was like group. So, but it was all day for 4 days.
What's the recovery time like on that?
What's that?
I said, what's the recovery time like on something like that? You good the next day, or do you have to like take it easy?
Yeah, well, no, I did 4 days in a row. I did 3 cum shots every day because I wanted to beat the guy that had previously, because they made sure to let me know the previous actor did this much. I said, okay, I'm gonna beat it because I'm competitive that way. So I did 3 every day, so it was 12 cum shots. Yeah, it was the thing that made it harder was that was in, I want to say that was the year 2000. And the company Vivid was still at that time using all condoms because of the scare from 97, 98. So not only was it, long days and a lot of women, but you had to have a new condom with every single girl. So I remember by the time it was all done, there was like a little layer of skin that had totally been removed from my penis.
That's kind of what I was envisioning. Yeah,
I'm done. So
how do you take a lunch? I mean, like, you get lunch breaks in between. I mean, every couple hours, right? I mean, brother's got to eat, right?
Yeah.
Now, big question I've always wanted to ask: fluffing. What is fluffing, and is fluffing a real thing?
Complete, absolute bullshit.
Really?
I don't know how that myth has propagated the world. I have no idea. Fluffers.
Well, there goes my plan B for my career.
No, fluffers do not exist ever.
Damn it. That would have been good, Kate, because it would have been behind the scenes fluffing, so no one would know you're fluffing.
Yeah, no.
Well, nobody would be hiring me for being, in front of the camera. But I figured if my whole, career path tanks at some point, I was going to be a fluffer, and now I'm fresh out of ideas.
Yeah, no fluffing. The only fluffer you have is your hand. That's it.
So there was no stage text doing it, like.
No. I mean, it's just you, and they're all just sitting around waiting for you. And that's a lot of the pressure that guys would succumb to, right? Because especially if you're on an old grizzled veteran set. I remember back in the day. I mean, a lot of these guys were, especially on the big sets. When I think about the early 2000s, late 90s, they were all really professional lighting tech guys. There was more work in porno than on mainstream sets, right? But I mean, these guys had been around doing it. They were all, in their 50s, 60s, old grizzled guys, and they had families. They wanted to go home. They did not give a shit about you. And, they'd let it be known, like, hey man, get your shit together. I want to go home. I want to go to my family. Right. So they were definitely not coddling guys. Like, you had to be on point if you didn't want to get rousted by them. And, with me, they always loved me because they're like, awesome guys, we're going home early today. So that was good.
So there's another thing out there that you actually agree with, and it is the broken theory to get into the business. You now, because of your background now with the brain and how the brain works, you agree with the following. In order to get into this line of work, you might have had some mental illness or broken at some point, correct?
Oh, some sort of like personal trauma?
Right.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, and let me qualify that statement, because I'm not saying because it's, you know, it's not true. Like so many people will be like, oh, every girl was molested. No, no, no. But I've never met anybody that didn't have some sort of trauma beforehand. You know, if you grew up with the perfect family and white picket fence and you were the most popular person in high school, you don't get into porno. You just don't. So it's always somebody that has some sort of issues, demons, some sort of trauma that happened to them in their childhood, and that's what brings you down that path.
I'm going to talk about relationships, but it's 12:33. 12:33 means it's time to talk anal. I want to talk about. I'm going to step up.
12:33, eh?
It is every time at 12:33. It's always an anal discussion on my show.
Okay.
I was going to tell Kate my first anal experience, but I pulled out because I wanted to do it on air, and I wanted everyone to know.
Yeah, no, I do want to hear this.
So
because we had this debate. I've never had a quote unquote accident occur, and I've had some very cavalier anal experiences. So I'm not sure how they happen, but
it's a horrendous first impression. This is girlfriends in college, maybe in Rhode Island. She is drinking a little bit. She decides to get into the bathtub, and she decides to say, "I want you to fuck me in the ass." I says, "All right, I'm going to dive in. You know, I can't swim because I wasn't man enough to jump in the water, and I need to jump into this water right now." So
the water's her asshole. Right?
The water is the asshole. Well, I think that's why she was in the. That's why she was in the tub, because I think she's thinking the water is going to help. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. It gets really morbid and really sad now, so everyone brace yourselves. So I proceed to take the jeans off. I proceed to slowly peel the underwear off, and it's covered in shit.
Wait, preemptively?
She shit herself.
Like beforehand?
She shit herself. Dick
Jesus,
wasn't
man.
out. Dick wasn't out. Nothing was out. It was about to come out. I was excited. This is my first water slide practically. I'm ready to go for a swim. And yeah, I smelled it first, and I was like, I mean, you know, if it's a little bit of duty, you wipe it away, no big deal, and jump in, right, Eric? I mean, I'm pretty sure you've done that before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had that mindset, but I would need a mop. That's how bad of a problem it was, and I was disgusted. And ever since then, I've been afraid.
This man has fucked over 4,000 women, and the look on his face when you just recounted that experience will be seared in my mind forever. So thank you, Sancho.
I mean, because I've also been through not exactly that, but I mean, I've been through definitely my share of, you know, I got my share of, you know, stories, right, when it comes to that. You know,
so I shared mine, so you're gonna have to share yours. And Kate, unfortunately, you may have to share one of yours. So
I'll share one of mine. It's not as good as yours.
When was the first time, Mitch, that a turd popped out, and how surprised were you when it popped out, and how'd you react to it?
Oh God, I'm trying to think of specific episodes. Though I do remember one that was fairly early on, because I remember I was working for Anabolic at the time, so it was probably about 2001. It's crazy how I just, you know, flashback. I remember I think it was for they had this teen girl line at the time, but yeah, it was like doggy position, and you know, we just had her, we're doing it, and moved the position, and out suddenly this, you know, like decent log just plops out right on the couch we're working there, right? And we're all just kind of in shock, right? But here's the difference, you know, the one thing that I learned, and I talk about it in the book, because I did learn this very early on, whenever something like that would happen, as a guy, you have to keep your shit together. You have to, right? Because if you don't, you might as well just pack up and go home. The scene will, for all intents and purposes, be over, right? Because the girl will be so mortified by what has happened because she's embarrassed, right? We get it. Like the last thing she's thinking is that she's going to shit on you or that she's going to shit that much, right? So, as a guy, your job is to absolutely pretend it doesn't, that it doesn't phase you. You got to just be like, yeah, whatever, it's all good, right? And move on real quick because you don't want their mind to start going down the rabbit hole of embarrassment and everything. And if you as a guy were to go, oh my God, oh, I mean, you might as well just pack up and go home. You've ruined the scene, right? Because now she is going to be so self-conscious. She is going to be in her head. She is not going to be able to relax. The whole day goes south. So that was one of the things that I learned really early on was, no, you cannot let anything like that phase you. Also for multiple reasons, right? Like not only for the girl's mental well-being, but for yours. Like you got to toughen up. Like this is just, it's like saying, you're a surfer, right? And you're going to go surf in the ocean, and someone says, well, are there sharks in there? And what's your response? Well, is the water salty? Right? It's like if you know where you're going, it's like, well, if I'm gonna be fucking a girl in the ass, then I might get shit on, right? And you have to be mentally ready for that. If that is the kind of thing that is going to phase you, and you think, well, I wouldn't be able to recover my erection if that happened, I would tell guys, like, don't even go there. Like, why wouldn't you set yourself up for, like, why would you set yourself up for failure rather than success, right?
Where, if any, onus do you have to, I don't want to say ask those personal questions to make sure, hey, you took an edible, right? Were you ever involved with that as far as making sure your partner was prepared so there weren't going to be any accidents, or was it kind of, let's just see what happens?
Okay, one more time, can you restate that?
I was asking about the onus on you. Was there any kind of responsibility on your part to kind of make sure that your partner or partners have done the proper preparation before an anal scene, or were you completely trusting your partner that it's totally on them to do it and it's up to them?
Yeah, no, it's always up to them. Now, because if I'm showing up on set and the girl has shown up on set, ideally in a perfect world, she has done her preparation a couple hours before. That's how you would normally have it done. You would occasionally, obviously you would get girls that they had no idea what they were doing. And then you would try to explain to them on set what they have to do. But most people would lead them through the rinsing protocol, right? So I've told girls what they need to do. Producers would tell them what to do. Agents, usually agents would be the ones that would say, hey, okay, if you're going to do this, here's what you should do the night before. Here's what you should do the morning of to make sure that everything goes well, which does help. It doesn't still equate to a 100% success rate, though.
So I have to ask,
Sure.
How is it balancing a relationship with this line of work? How does that work out from in your experience anyway?
Okay. Do you want to go a little deeper on that, or do you want me to?
Well, I mean, in a conventional sense, right? There's an expectation of strict monogamy in most relationships. Can't say all, we're not going to paint with a broad brush, but in your experience, is it difficult kind of doing this line of work and then kind of coming home to a relationship and still being able to keep it, somewhat conventional or comfortable or functional?
No, that was never difficult. Mainly, I would say it's one of the misconceptions that I think a lot of people have about porn stars. I would say most of the people that I've known in porno, if they get into a relationship, they are monogamous outside of work, right?
Right.
And I don't know why we all seem to gravitate to that, but I think part of it could be that whenever you do something so extreme on one side, you want something to bring yourself back to balance or bring yourself back to some sense of normalcy. So conventionally, most people, if they were in a relationship within porno, it was always monogamous. So for myself, I never really had that many issues as far as keeping them separate. And the other caveat as well is that me personally, I have never hidden what I've done from anybody, right? I mean, if people ask me what I do, I tell them straight out, which is actually one of the funniest life filters you could ever have, because it's shocking to see the look on people's faces when you tell them, because it's the last thing they think's coming out of your mouth.
Right.
Right. But so you get a real picture of the person right then and there. I mean, it's a split second, but you do get to read them very easily. So you can see if they are the type of person that you would enjoy hanging out with further or not, because they cannot hide their either interest or absolute disgust, and it just comes out in a second, right? But you see it and you're like, okay, I see where you stand on the issue. So with me, it was never a problem, because any girl that I was in a relationship with, they knew what they were getting into, right? It's like, okay, I want to date the porno actor. Well, I'm dating the porno actor, right? So.
And just from listening to your response, it sounds like you have been confronted with some of that stigma, right? What's that like?
Well, it's never been bad. So the stigma in that sense, you would just have that, as soon as they heard what you did, they go, oh, okay. And then it's just kind of left at that. Like it was never, obviously then they're not interested. Right. And it's like, okay, no harm, no foul. But I wouldn't say by and large I suffered from a lot of stigma. I think, the only thing stigma wise I would say is most people, when they've met me, they're always shocked how well spoken and intelligent I was. And, and then I have to say, well, I was going to one of the best schools in the country of Canada before I decided to drop out and do porno, so.
Isn't that incredible too? Because intelligent people have sex, right? That's how they breed more intelligent people. It's just sort of a given, but.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the porno business is, you have this commonality where like I said, everybody is, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are kind of hypersexual, and they may have had some sort of trauma that led them down the path. But outside of that, you get every walk of life, right? So, I've met people that were super, hyper intelligent. I've met the people that were not intelligent at all. You've met the people that they were the nerds in high school. I've met the people that they were the drug addicts. It's like I've seen every walk of person at some point in the business.
How challenging is it for you? Obviously, there's such thing as a great fuck, but how challenging is it you to find that greatness from a mental, point of view, with you being how smart you are? Did you or do you kind of expect the female to match you intellectually or have some kind of intelligence and not just be a great fuck? And how challenging has that been for you?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, for me personally, like I can't date anybody that's not intelligent. Especially because um, I'm very analytical, right? I like politics. I like a lot of things that make me think. So for me,
I think that sounds like Kate.
Yeah.
so for me, I definitely need some sort of stimulating discussion that doesn't involve fashion and makeup. Let's put it that way. So
how challenging is it for you to find that person? Because currently right now you are single or you're not single?
No, I'm single right now.
You're single right now. Oh, kind of single?
Well, I mean, you always have, friends with benefits, but no, let's just say without that, because there's that, of course, but single.
As a single guy, how active is the sex, and how? I'll be honest with you, and I'm not speaking for Kate, but if Kate met you at a cafe and knew who you were and you were showed interest in someone like Kate, I think, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd be intimidated as hell. No?
Well, to be fair, I'm intimidated by most men anyway. On that level anyway. But I'm also quite married. So like, it's taken a good downturn for me. But yeah, I mean, he's intelligent.
Has that been a thing with for as far as females being intimidated by you?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's definitely that. But it's I've found in my personal experience, yeah, they're a little bit intimidated because the whole sexual thing, like they don't really know what they're getting into, right? So there's excitement and there's intimidation behind it. I'll tell you a funny story if you want.
Please.
This was when I was still living in Los Angeles, and I went to this concert, and I met this young girl, and we were partying, dancing, everything. She asked what I do. I say, and she's like, "No, you're full of bullshit." And I was there with a group of my friends, so I yelled at my friend Dan. I said, "Dan, what do I do for a living?" And Dan yells back, "He's an international porn star." And she's like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "I told you, I wasn't lying." So we exchange numbers, and we go out the next week, right? So we go out to this nightclub together. We're having some drinks, we're dancing, everything's good, and we're just dancing on the dance floor together. And this group of about 7 guys walks by, and they just stop in their tracks, right? And they look at me, and the guy goes, "Holy fuck! Oh my god, you're Erik Everhard!" So then I have these 7 dudes around me, and they are all, they want selfies. They're taking pictures, and then it happens. The guy turns to this little young girl, and he just looks at her and says, "Do you know who this is? He's a fucking famous porn star." And then he goes on to say, "Have you fucked him? His dick's like this big. Oh, you gotta fuck him." And I was just mortified. I was like, oh my God, right? Imagine if I had told her I was a lawyer or something. She'd have been like, what the fuck? But it was definitely entertaining. I got a laugh out of it. So
how challenging is it for you now to get that? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you went through what, 20 20 years of this line of work?
22, 23.
How do you replace that rush? I mean, you seem like a very competitive guy. How do you replace that? And when was your last scene? How did you feel during the end of your last scene? Was it sort of like, like Tom Brady's going to be, where he, like hangs up his gloves and his,
well,
helmet?
I haven't officially retired yet. So,
when was your last scene?
Last week.
Last week was your last scene.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're still very. Do you find that it's a challenge for a female to want a relationship with you because you're still active in the porn industry?
Yes and no. I mean, definitely. And it's also my own personal feeling. Like, I think with relationship dynamics and what I've seen, to really, like, if you're really going to go in with a relationship, I think when that time comes, for me especially, there will have to be a full retirement. Just, like I said, you go through this journey and you've experienced so much, and so I've seen what works and what doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're actually going to have something that is successful or has the best chance of success, that I think is going to have to be one of the criteria.
How would you tell a like normal person, if you aren't like shooting sex scenes and are just a guy, how would you ask your girlfriend to prep her ass? Pretty much what Joker wants to know is he wants to know how to tell his girlfriend to prep her ass for anal.
Oh, well, I mean, that would be pretty easy. I mean, the first thing I would say is, well, if there's going to be a long enough time, if you're going to do it the next day, like, I'd probably say, well, stop eating for 8 hours, right? Like, have your last meal and then don't eat again. Let that push through. Then the main things that I would be doing is I'd be doing a rinse protocol. So you could do that two different ways. You could either have a separate, basically like an enema bottle, right, that you can fill with water. In the business in Los Angeles, typically what people would do is they would buy disposable enema bottles, but they would dump the enema out because you don't actually want to use the medical liquid that's in them. You just want the bottle, right? Because if you use that liquid, this is one of the problems. If people actually use a real enema, like, you're going to be shitting for hours and hours and hours. I mean, that medicine is going to stay working in you and is going to cause more problems. So you just want to use water, but you need to get it in there. So in the business, we would just buy disposable bottles, fill it with water, and then the girl is going to do a rinse multiple times where she's pushing all the water in, sit on the toilet, squeeze it out, and you just keep flushing the system over and over, right? Until you just have clean water coming out. Now, conversely, what is conventionally done in Europe, especially because of the way the bathrooms and showers are here, is you can just use a shower attachment hose, and girls will just stick that up their ass and just turn on the water and just fill it, rinse it, fill it, and just do it that way in the shower. Right.
Now, was there a peak year for you as far as in the adult industry, like your highest gross year in it? And if you want to say what that was, please do.
Tough to say. I mean, probably when I had my production company going full blast, that was, if we're talking monetarily, then that would have probably been my best years. But I mean, as an actor, it was always steady. So as an actor, I would say the years didn't really change at all. I would say performance-wise, I would say probably, I think when I look at my performances over the years, I think my performances in my 20s were stronger physically, and the ones in my 30s were stronger emotionally. If that makes sense.
How high was the drug use? And did you ever have to cut a scene because it was an issue?
Oh, well, qualify the statement of what you mean by drug use.
As far as, is it, there's always a thing out there that, you know, that the porn industry in its heyday, there was a lot of drug use being used. Soft, hard, pretty much everything. It may or may not have been used as a coping with a lot of the female actresses. True or false on that?
Okay, so at least, you know, I'm giving you my perspective over the years, right? When I got in 1999, all sets are basically run like a business. So you would never find any sort of open drug use on a porno set, right? Minus, of course, because it's California, everybody, you know, if people do not consider marijuana as a drug, right? And now it is technically legal. So you'd have people that would, you know, they would smoke weed, and that would be it. But past that, no, there was never any drugs on set. Not to say that I haven't worked with a woman that has clearly used something in the bathroom on her own. But that was not sanctioned by anybody, that's for sure. Does that answer your question somewhat?
It does. Kate?
So what do you think people's biggest misconception about the porn industry is?
Say that one more time.
What do you think that the general public's like biggest misconception about the porn industry is?
Biggest misconception, that we're fucking 24/7. That's what I think. I mean, like, I've seen people, like, if you were to go to an actual porno party sometimes, I mean, we're all just hanging out like it. I think people assume, you know, if we go to a porn party, there's like, it's this gigantic orgy and everybody just fucks everybody. It's like, no, not at all. I mean, there's probably less sex going on at a porno party than probably some of these mainstream movie parties. And I mean, if you've ever watched, you know, that you'll see all these memes, but you know, there'll be the AVN Awards show, and they show the girls in the nice dresses, and then they show the you know, these Hollywood actresses at the Met Gala, and they look more like porn stars than the porn stars look at our award show, which I always think is kind of funny. But no, I mean, if you go to an event, you know, people in porno, there is a very sharp delineated line between this is work and this is my free time. So, you know, it's like, okay, well, I'm getting paid. This is my job. I'm fucking so-and-so and so-and-so. Okay. But as soon as you're off the clock, you're like, no, I'm not fucking anybody that I don't want to. Sorry. I'm not, you know. So it's, people have this misconception that, you know, these girls are crazy nymphos that would fuck anybody at the drop of a hat. It's like, no, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest.
Now, in your opinion, your preference, a good porno movie, plot or no plot?
Yeah, no plot. I mean, we used to say, my business partner and mentor, Mike John, you know, he used to say the plot was the reality. Like, you know, like this really pretty girl sitting here, like that's the plot, right? And ultimately, that's what the fans, that's why they were coming to the show. So, yeah, I mean, not that I have a problem. I really enjoyed the plot movies, and I had fun with the acting, so I enjoyed those things. Especially as far as a porno actor, because it made things different on set. It made things not more exciting, but just it's like you could spend a whole day. I've been shot with bullets. You do all these crazy things for for a big budget movie, and it was fun, right? It was something new, something different. But when you think about, well, what is the paying customer actually coming to the show for? I don't think they really care about that much.
Hey, all I'm saying is Playboy had some fantastic articles, and the plot of Deep Throat, hands down, one of the most creative movie plots I've ever seen.
I gotta ask. I don't know if I want to know the answer, but I gotta ask about the bank bus. That's scripted, obviously, right?
Oh, yeah. Though,
shit,
I don't know. Here's the thing, because I wasn't around. I'd have to ask some people. But I believe, all of that was scripted. I definitely did do some work for some websites that were reality based, that were real. Now they changed after a while because they couldn't keep that going. But and this was back in the early 2000s, like beginning of the internet. But there were, I remember one specific website where they shot some absolutely crazy shit, and it was all 100% real. And yeah, I mean, but for the most part, yeah, they've got to script everything, because they have so much content that they need to produce, and they have strict deadlines, and now the fact that large corporations have taken over all of the porno business, they are now deathly afraid of lawsuits. Whereas 20 years ago, these mom and pop companies, nobody was thinking about a lawsuit and didn't care, because it was very renegade from that standpoint. So
I do have to ask about the soft question. How often did you get soft? Do you get soft, in a scene? And what does that do to you mentally? Or have you ever not gone soft in the middle of a scene?
I've never failed a scene.
Never failed a scene.
I'm probably the only guy that's never failed a scene. Now, so have I gotten soft? No. Have I had days that were better than others? Yes. And that is where, I remember this was pretty early on in my career. I remember there was one scene. I mean, it was probably the worst scene that I ever did. I didn't like the girl, and I had just gotten back. I remember, because this was still my first year in Los Angeles, and it was so funny, because you learn about all these different mental techniques, right? And I had just gotten back from doing a European trip, so I was, which I did amazing. So I was full of confidence in my abilities, right? And then I was on set this day, and of course, I made the mistake. Like if you often get too arrogant, that's going to be the time when life, the universe, whatever, comes to give you some humble pie. And that day for me was humble pie, because literally on set, we had been talking about how great I did on this trip, because the producer was like, how'd it go? I was like, oh, I killed it. This was amazing, blah, 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 right? And then that day I struggled, man, with this girl. I struggled. And
how would you struggle? Like, walk us through what that means with you, like struggling wise.
Oh, it just means, it's like, well, it's like you get hard, you know, you keep it for, you know, maybe it's like you got it together for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, then you kind of start to lose it. You know, you're not focusing on the things that you need to focus on, right? And this is, like I said, this is where I really learned, you know, okay, how do you combat this, right? Because, you know, I was young back then, and I didn't really know how to deal with the rabbit hole when you start going down it. Now I do. So, because that's the problem with anything that's performance anxiety based, right? It's like, you know, once you get that thought in your head, the thought keeps growing, and it becomes this, you know, feedback loop into itself, right? So you're like, well, God, you know, I'm starting to lose my heart on. Hope I don't lose my heart on. Well, what happens, right? Well, now you start to get softer. Oh God, now, I hope I can get it back. Well, now, you know, every time those thoughts go on, it's producing more adrenaline. It's producing, you know, more of these hormones, which is letting you get softer and softer. And the softer you get, the more anxiety you get about being softer. Like, it just starts perpetuating itself down, right? You're like, fuck, right? And you really do need to pattern interrupt that stuff.
A huge thing that I was fascinated about in your book was, in my opinion, the longer you can fuck, the better. That's in my opinion. But you have the special ability to come on demand. When, you know, there was a scene you brought up in your book where you had like somebody in your ear, you know, you were railing this person, you were railing this girl, and pretty much the guy had to jump in and say, hey, we need a cum shot, and you just flipped the fucking switch and did the cum shot. Is that a talent? How do you acquire that talent? And walk us through the steps of developing that talent.
Well, I mean, for me, you know, it's the ability to focus your conscious attention, right? And this was something that I kind of developed actually in the last 5 years when I really realized it. There was so this will be a little long-winded, but I'll go into it. So when I was attending my NLP school the last 10 years, we were taught, there was one course they had, which was called the DMA course, which was for Dimensional Mind Approach. And it was an original course by this guy named Dr. Robert Fritz. Now, that course had to do with basically taking your conscious, your subconscious, and your superconscious, and bringing those 3 dimensions of mind together to, you know, manifest whatever it is that you want in the universe, right? That's the basics of it. But he had this phenomenal focusing exercise that we would do and we would listen to on a tape, and it was very powerful because it would actually create this energy that you could actually feel. And I remember one day I was ruminating on that that focusing exercise and that process, and I thought, holy shit! I'm like, this can be applied to sexuality. Right. And when I did that, I noticed a big thing that I'd actually been doing most of my career, but I never realized that I could consciously control it. And that is that using your conscious awareness, you can change what your penis is feeling in the moment just by shifting conscious attention. Now, does it mean you don't feel everything? No, but it does help, especially on both sides of the equation, whether it is you want to last longer or you want to come faster, right? So, you know, and to give you an example of it, it would be like, okay, if I told you right now, like, just focus on your right hand and feel nothing but your right hand. Like, and we can sit here and you can actually, if you put all your focused conscious attention, you can only feel your right hand and nothing else, right? And then I say, okay, well, now feel your right big toe. And you move all your conscious awareness just to that right big toe. And then I say, okay, now move your conscious awareness to your left hand. Feel your left hand, right? And you will notice I could use nose, I could use chin. Like we can actually move your conscious awareness all the way around your body. And you're just feeling that exact one part of your body. You can do the same thing with your penis, right? And when you do that, when you do focus your conscious attention, it's much easier to produce a cum shot, or vice versa, right? If you're focusing your conscious awareness actually on the woman, which is something that I will usually do by default, you are actually feeling. You're basically feeling what she is feeling, which is I know it gets a little kind of spiritual, but when you're feeling what she's feeling, that's how you're easily able to understand what's going to get her off. But you're no longer focused on yourself. So it's literally like your penis is there, but you're not really feeling it. You're not feeling it nearly to the degree as if suddenly you actually focused your conscious attention and you were like, oh, wow, damn, now I have a penis, right? Does that make sense?
That sounds almost like a mindfulness exercise, like, something that you'd see in like
It very much
Yeah.
is, in a sense, mindfulness exercise, but I found it to be super powerful because, this, I call it my laboratory. The porno, this was the last 5 years. I started experimenting with it, and it was fascinating because I'd have, this downtime on set, and so me and this girl would just be fucking, right, between takes, because if you get along, like, you'll just keep working. And so I started playing with it, and I would go, without breaking a stroke, I would just switch my conscious attention. And I noticed, okay, if I switched to my penis, like within 30 seconds, I could feel the urge to orgasm. But I would then switch my conscious attention into her. I would never stop stroking. Like, I didn't stop working. It's not like I pulled out, nothing, just kept going. And as soon as I switched the conscious attention, the urge to come went away. And so I was like, okay, now I'm onto something here. So
in your book, you kind of outlined the 4 different types of pussies. Could you walk us through that?
Well, yeah. And these, of course, have nothing to do, when I talk about the 4 types, these are qualities, right? They have nothing to do with how a pussy actually looks on the outside, right? Which is, this is, again, one of those myths and misnomers, right? Because you always have, the locker room thing where it's like, if the girl's got big pussy lips, it's like, oh, she must have fucked 1,000 dudes, right? It's like, no, dude, that's genetic, right? Like, that'd be like telling a guy, like, like, oh, if the more girls you fuck, the bigger your dick would get, right? It was like, I mean, at that point, everybody be masturbating like crazy so they could have, this gigantic dick. Well, you don't see it, right? So, the way that a girl's pussy looks actually has absolutely nothing to do with how it feels or anything going on inside. But yeah, after all my experimentation, I figured out that there were 4 different types, right? So, and every woman is a combination of these. So if you looked at it basically like a like one of those stereo equalizers, on a stereo where it's like you got the sliding scale, right? On the far extreme, on one side, you would have what I quote as velvety, right? And it has to do with the texture, because you have to understand, like, so right now, if we lined up, just say 20 women, right? And we put them all in short mini skirts, and you just ran your hand over their legs. Have you ever noticed, like every woman, like her legs, they've got the skin has a different quality to it, right? So some girls, their legs will be super soft, like buttery soft, like shea butter, but some will, they'll have that firmness to them. Others, they'll be, more squishy, or the girl's legs could be kind of, dry. So maybe like a rougher texture, and it has nothing to do with how beautiful she is. Like, this is just the quality of her skin, right? Do you follow me on this so far?
Yeah.
So you have to understand the same quality differences actually exist inside as well. So So that's what I mean. Like you will have on this far extreme, you'll have what I term to be velvety, because I've felt girls that are on the furthest extreme of that, and that was the only word that I could come that really encapsulated what I was experiencing. Right. So a girl with a velvety pussy, it's got that. It really feels like a piece of velvet. Like it is completely smooth, soft. It's got this buttery, soft texture to it, right? That your penis feels. Then, if you go to the furthest extreme, you'll have what I consider to be granular, right? And so, a woman with a granular pussy, and I'm not saying that either one is good or bad, right? And that's something I want your listeners to understand, because otherwise they'll be like, oh man, well, velvety sounds better. Well, no, it depends what your penis responds to, right? And I've got a story about that I'll go into later. But so on the far extreme, then you have granular. And the granular, the only way I can describe it is it's kind of like God, you think about it in the terms of, sometimes they'll have those condoms where it's like, well, ribbed for her pleasure. Well, it kind of feels like that on the inside of the pussy. Like, it's like almost feels like nodules, or almost like grains of sand. Like the skin will have that sort of texture to it. So it's got a rougher-ish texture, right? So those are the two furthest extremes of the skin qualities. And then, like I said, it's that sliding scale. So you could have a girl who's kind of in the middle, and she's like, well, she's not velvety, she's not really granular, she's kind of like mid zone, or she could be more towards velvety, she could be more towards granular. And then you will meet those girls that are at the furthest extremes of each type, right? And then the next category under that is obviously comes down to tightness. So you'll have on one side of the equation, we'll have extremely, extremely, extremely tight. Then on the other continuum, you'll have loose, and every girl is a sliding scale somewhere between those, right? And once again, that's got nothing to do with how many guys she's slept with. That's just genetic. I've worked with girls that were, mid 30s, 40 years old, that had been with so many guys, and it was literally like a vice trap. You're trying to get in there. And I remember, I'm not going to mention her by name, but there was this one super famous 18-year-old porn star that we worked with back in the 2000s. And I remember one actor calling it, he goes, "This is like throwing a hot dog down a hallway."
Oh.
And it was very true. Like, I mean, and we're all packing. It's not like there was no guy in the room with a small penis, and we were just like, God, can you feel anything in there? Like, I mean, she was 18. It's just genetic.
So you've created kind of like the Kinsey scale of vaginas.
If you want to call it that. I mean, this is just this is what, after 5,000 women, what I've said. Okay, this is what you have, right? Like this is what these qualities are, in the best way that I could articulate it.
When you were growing up, like in high school, did you ever envision yourself someday being like a vagina expert? Was this part of your plan, or no?
No. There was no
cool resume point.
I had no idea what I was going to do, right? When I was a kid, I mean, you grow up in Canada, it's just very conventional. Well, you're going to go to university and you're going to, get a, some job of some kind. But no, there was no dream that I had, other than I really enjoyed school. So for me, I liked going, but there wasn't something that I was thinking about specifically that I wanted to do. No.
Have you ever used a white towel during a scene? A white towel is essentially a boxing reference that a manager throws in the towel and waves it off. It's over. The fight's over. Did you ever have to wave off a scene beforehand with a co-star? And if so, obviously don't say who the co-star is, but like describe, if you did, why did you wave the flag off?
Oh, okay. Yeah, only on a couple occasions. Yeah. One time because I knew the girl had some sort of medical issue. Um, that she was too young to understand about. Because it's like if you've been in the business, then you know what bacterial vaginosis smells like, and it's as literally as soon as I pulled her panties down, I was like, "Ooh!" I said, "Nope, we're done. We're done." I know what that is.
That
Right?
was like my experience, but it was just the other hole that was discharged.
Yeah, no. So then I was like, time, we call time. And you're nice about it because she has no, she's 18, she's never experienced that. She doesn't know. But by the same time, I'm like, how can you not smell it? Right. And probably the only other time was when there was a company that switched the scene on me and lied to me about it. So it's like I was supposed to work with so and so. I show up and they're like, "Oh, well, we switched it." I said, "Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not going to work with this particular person." So I was like, "I'm going home."
Doing a quick plug, unleash your sexual superpowers. Erik Everhard, ericeverhard.com, amazon.com. I want to talk about a topic you discussed in your amazing book, porn injuries. Can you describe the amount of porn injuries you have sustained and how the hell did you get injured doing a scene?
Oh God. Well, I mean, I've probably been injured quite a few times. Luckily for me, they've been just surface injuries, but it's generally speaking, it's the same two things that are going to happen, right? You're either getting injured by teeth or you're getting injured by nails. So for me, those are the two major things that I've dealt with, definitely. Sometimes worse than others. The worst I ever had, I remember, I was working for my buddy Dave, and there was this girl with these absolute panther fake nails on, and she's rubbing her clit, and I could feel where the nails came dangerously close to slicing my dick. So I specifically told her, I said, "Hey, don't do that, right?" And she's either didn't care or didn't want to pay attention, and she decided 5 minutes later to go do it again, and her nails just cut across me and just cut me open. and yeah, I just so I was there clotting blood for the next 20 minutes, and then I was able to resume the scene, but I was less than pleased, let's put it that way.
How did you avoid not breaking your dick? Because it seems like in the book you were very specific on what mistakes others made, and why did you not make that mistake on breaking your dick?
Oh yeah, well, because that has happened to a couple actors, and and that's specifically, there's a couple that I know that their porn career's over. Like there's one actor, he had to have surgery done, and I don't think his dick ever worked properly after that. So when I refer to breaking your dick, obviously it's the girl sits on it in some fashion where it's hard, but it'll snap it in half essentially, which is breaking your, was it the corporal cavernosa? It's basically breaking all that tissue, because when a dick is soft, you can do whatever you want to it, but if it's hard, you can't mess with that stuff, because it's all the tissue is filled with blood. And you would usually find specifically two positions where it could happen, right? And that was either reverse cowgirl or cowgirl. And the problem that goes on there, and I've fought this all the time. and I'm consciously aware of this all the time, because, you know, especially when you're putting on a performance, some girls will take the performance too far, and they don't realize what they're doing. That, or they don't care what they're doing. It could be a combination, but they will not be paying attention on how far they are coming off of the guy's dick when they are doing any movement on their own. So what I found real early on was, you need to keep your hands on the hips of the girl. You need to control how high up on your dick she is going at all times, because if you just leave it to her devices, she's not going to feel it. And what's going to happen is she's going to rise up too far to where she actually comes off of it. But if she's violently moving very fast and hard, trying to, you know, make the production look, you know, visually appealing, she'll jump off, and then she'll come smack down, and she will snap your dick in half. And, you know, and also it depends where you are, also where your hard on is, right? Because the one saving grace that I've had is because the base of my penis is so wide that if I have a 100% erection, it's literally impossible to snap the thing, right? But if you caught me at, say, 85% erection, right, where it's like, then yeah, if you move the wrong way, you could definitely snap mine. And I've had some close calls where, you know, luckily, you know, I had, you know, 100% erection, and the girl did that, and instead of snapping it, because my dick was so hard, it just glanced and bounced off. But yeah, it runs through your mind, and because that would ruin your, I mean, it would ruin your career. You'd be done. So you have to monitor 100% how far the girl is coming off of you, and you do that by keeping your hands on their hips. You actually, because they don't know, or they don't feel it, or they don't care. But it doesn't matter which one it is. If you are not making sure that you are actively controlling for that, you could end up in a world of hurt.
Now, with the advent of like user-generated and free porn sharing sites and apps like oh, there you go, right there, YouPorn and Pornhub and Xhamster, has that taken a bite out of profits in the industry?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that destroyed the industry. I mean, when I look at the how the industry has changed over the years, no, that destroyed it.
So working now, what does that look like? You know, is it still profitable in any way, or?
Well, it's profitable for very few people that control those big tube sites, right?
That's
You know,
unfortunate.
if we were to use now, it's not the right analogy, but let's just use it in a pseudo analogy. Look at what Amazon has done to retail stores, right? It's like, so you end up in this, everybody loses money because it becomes very much winner take all, right? But it becomes on such an extreme level. So, you know, like, you may have 100 brick and mortar businesses that go under, and you have one Amazon. So how much, you know, Amazon's making a lot of money, but how many people lost money? You know, you have way more lives destroyed than you have something good created from that perspective, right?
Yeah, I would assume the first casualties are the talent, correct?
No. Talent's not the first casualty at all. No.
Okay.
The production companies. Talent's never changed. Talent has never changed. Talent has never changed. You know, You know, the money that I made as an actor, that never changed based on uh, those free sites. But what got decimated was all the smaller companies.
Right.
So,
could you tell us about the two kinds of erections?
oh, well, I broke them down into two categories because I found it was very useful, because most people they collapse them into one, right? So it's like, okay, you get this erection, and you know, especially if you're in an interaction with a woman, right? And you're making out, you're leading down the sexual path with this woman, and maybe you get an erection or you don't, right? And most people right then and there, the anxiety starts to build in them. They say, oh my God, why am I not getting hard, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't understand that there are two separate types of erections. So the first one is what I call the spontaneous erection, or the erection of the mind, right? And that is different because that erection is totally created by you either seeing something, or you doing something to a woman, i.e., maybe you're eating her pussy, you're making out with her, right? But at no time are you actually ever touching your dick, right? So whatever that you are doing or seeing is directly causing a mental component to give you an erection. Like, it's arousing you, turning you on in some mental capacity that is then, spontaneously like, boom, I have an erection, right? But that's the first type, and what you have to realize is that there is a whole second type of hard-on, which is totally 100% created by purely only physical stimulation, right? So what does that mean? Well, it's like, either it's done by you touching it, the woman touching it, like something is physically contacting your dick in order for it to get hard. Now, this is useful to know because, the one type of hard-on is the one you cannot control, right? And, I would oscillate between the two of them my entire career, and it would be based on who the director was, how they were setting things up, who the girl was, right? Like, I could show up on set. I have a beautiful co-star. I have a director that actually wants to just be a fly on the wall and not tell me what to do or interfere at any time. So you'd start a scene, you start making out, you start getting into it, boom, suddenly you're hard in your pants, right? Like, because you're actually turned on from a mental perspective, right? But then you could just as easily have a director, they want to tell you step by step what's going to go on, and you have a girl that you don't like or you don't get along with. And, at that point, it's like, well, as soon as you start the scene, it's like, well, my dick is as small as it could possibly be, right? But I can get it hard really fast, but I can do it myself. Now, the thing is, that is the one part that is completely in control, that I am completely in control of. So it's like, for most guys out there, what they need to realize is that they actually are in control of what their dick is doing. They just don't realize it. It's like they'll be in a situation where they don't get hard immediately and they think there's something wrong, but they don't realize that there are two separate types of hard-ons. One, they're leaving it up to chance. I mean, chance being relative, right? Because you can't explain everything that's going on in your biological system, right? Like, you could just be having a bad day. Like, you may not be nervous at all, but maybe what you ate for breakfast doesn't work with your stomach. Maybe it's still digesting. There could be a million different reasons why for whatever reason, you're starting this sexual interaction with a girl and you don't have spontaneous wood. That doesn't mean your dick doesn't work, though. And it doesn't mean that you need to start going down that rabbit hole of, oh my God, am I going to get hard? Am I going to get hard, right? It's like, no, you can just get yourself hard, right? Real easy. And that hard on is always available to you. So.
And when I listen to you talk about these things, I can almost, there's like a passion that is emanating from you. What got you motivated to kind of delve into this almost sex coaching?
Well, that was a whole transformational journey that I went on the last 10 years. It started for me. This was, it was probably 2009, I believe. Yeah, it was 10 years ago. 11 years ago. Holy shit. Where I took a relationship workshop from this one kind of guru guy up in San Francisco. And it was really, really unique. So it got me being very present in myself, right? Present in my body. It was a very, very unique transformational workshop. And when that workshop was done, that had kind of opened up something for me where I was like, okay, I want to kind of explore some more things. And within the group, because the guy was from San Francisco and stuff, and definitely a little more, spiritual woo-woo kind of guy. And I remember hearing about this thing called, NLP, right? Neuro-linguistic programming for those people that don't know. And, when I looked into it, it was kind of like, well, it was sort of like hypnotherapy and this and that. And I thought to myself, well, that sounds like that might be kind of useful. And I was thinking about it more from, I'm not going to use the word like being able to manipulate people, but I thought like, well, that would be a good tool to have in the toolbox, right? Like that sounds cool. So, and I was always somebody that, if I was going to do something, I wanted to just find who was the best teacher or best mentor and go there. So I asked around and these people were like, well, the best school there's one up in Marin County. I said, okay, that's where I'm going. So I signed up and I would, drive or fly up to San Francisco. And for the next 3 years, kind of be like once a month, I would go to this school. And it was not anything like I was expecting. So it was very holistic. It was very life-changing. And, every weekend you'd go up there and, they would basically peel the onion layers back of your soul, so to speak, right? Like, your childhood traumas you'd be dealing with, like the things that were holding you back, like all these subconscious demons that you may have, and you'd be addressing and you'd be learning how to address them. And, because the whole idea was like, well, whatever present, because you have a present state experience and you have a desired state experience. It's like, well, how can I get to the desired state experience? Well, if everything was going how I wanted it, I would be having that experience. So if I'm not having it, why? Right? And so then you start unpacking, okay, well, what do I want? What's holding me back? Why do I want that? And you start really, going down and down this rabbit hole about these base level states. Most of what happened to us between 1 and 5 years old, right? But these things, then affect you when you're in your, 20s, 30s, 40s, right? Like you'll have people that they're older and they don't go after their dreams. And if you say, well, just go do it, they're deathly afraid and they don't know why, right? Because it's all subconscious, right? So you would never be able to articulate why you are too afraid to, go for that job interview, or too afraid to speak up at a conference, or to, you're just like, well, it's just how I am, right? It's like, well, not really. There's something much deeper holding you back. So, so I spent 3 years doing that. And like I said, that was by far one of the most transformational experiences that I ever had. But the downside was, through that, then I started having all these more existential questions that started to pop up, where it was like, okay, well, I'm not really feeling this porno thing anymore. It's like, well, fuck, what is my purpose in life then? And, when I started the business, even in my early 20s, I was very cognizant that I was doing a sports career, right? Or at least an analogous sports career, right? And, you think about, NHL, NFL players, you got a shelf life, right? I maybe they're not so cognizant of it. I certainly was, like you start at 20 and you're like, well, okay, I've seen the top actors and I can basically tell you when they've all had to retire, because you just hit a point where, you're good, but you're not as good as the 22-year-old, right? This is the same thing in sports. It's like you could be the hot shot quarterback at 23. There's only one Tom Brady still doing it in his 40s, right? Like there's a reason everybody else is retired, because they just can't keep up anymore. So knowing that, I knew that at some point I would be transitioning to something else. But I was really, at that point, I was really lost. I was like, well, what's my purpose? And it was this big, big overarching question, like, well, what am I here to do? What's my purpose? And so after wrestling with that question for quite a while, I couldn't find any answers. So I enlisted a business coach that I know, who, what he does is he actually takes entrepreneurs down to the Amazon jungle, and he would do these retreats with them where he would, work on their businesses. But in between that, they would work with shamanic plant medicines, aka ayahuasca, to, open up their mind or show them insights or purpose or what have you. And, for years I'd heard about ayahuasca, and I was deathly afraid to try it because, when I was 15 years old, I did LSD and I thought it was the most miserable experience ever. So I thought to myself, well, fuck, I don't like seeing things, so I'm never doing that again. Right. And I knew this was a, potent psychedelic, right? This ayahuasca. So I thought, fuck, I don't want to do that. And, so ruminated on that for a while. And eventually, the pain of sitting there with this question of what is my purpose became a larger pain than, well, I might see some stuff that I don't like. So I reached out to him, and he connected me with a shaman in Los Angeles, and yeah, then I did my first ayahuasca ceremony.
You may and might not want to answer this one, but one of the questions, what's Erik's take on the issue facing Ron Jeremy currently? Does he have any take on the subject?
Oh, I'm going to keep my lips sealed on that one.
There has been,
because I don't know. I haven't spoken to anybody in Los Angeles specifically about that. I was actually going to. So yeah, until I would know more, I wouldn't want to fuel any sort of speculation on anything, because that's, then that's just the mob going after somebody for, maybe no reason. So
I may impress you with this following research, but I researched a quote from a co-star of yours, and this co-star said you are the most skilled and energetic white guy. What are your thoughts on that comment, and how do you develop such a nice comment about yourself about that?
Like for me, when I would go into a scene, and it progressed over my career, right? Like, you don't figure things out just overnight. And that's, that's also why I wrote the book and I got into this, because I realized, well, God, here I was blessed with this laboratory where I could really figure out all this stuff. But who has that opportunity, right? Like nobody. It's like you're just never going to have an opportunity to get this level of learning. So, in my 20s, it was, I learned more about techniques. I learned positioning. I learned a lot of things there physically, but then things switched where I really started honing in mentally and really spent my time figuring out, okay, well, what works to get women off, how and why, right? So then, depending on the director or producer that I would be working with, when I went into a scene, my goal was, okay, I need to create something magical here, and I have very little time to do it. So it's like, well, how can I get this girl off as fast as possible, as good as possible, and keep it so she, for this next, let's say, hour, she forgets that she's in a room with a bunch of strangers and a guy with a camera and a lighting crew, right? Because, if you can get her to orgasm so many times, it's like, time stops, right? Like, it's like they really, you can have somebody where they actually forget what they're actually doing. Like, you can just get very, very singularly focused on what you're doing, and everybody standing around just becomes white noise, right? So that's what I was always trying to do. It's like, well, how can I create this sort of white noise experience for the girl where it's just her and it's me, and it's me trying to, get her off as many times as possible, so that we have this, incredible scene.
I want to play photo association with you, and I greatly appreciate all your time. Let me know when we're getting close to the end. I can go for hours with you, like I said earlier. You can go for hours on scene, and I can go for hours on the panel on the show. So gotcha. I'm going to show you a photo of somebody.
Okay.
I am hoping and praying I don't get porn bombed. That's the challenge with you. So there you go. What are your thoughts on this gal?
Oh, wow. Sexual beast.
Talk about that. It's in your book.
Yeah, I mean,
Miss Annette Schwartz.
Yeah, she was probably the most hyper sexual man-eater of a woman that I've ever come across. And I mean that in a nice way. I mean, she was incredible. But probably, like, when I think about all the girls that I worked with, she was the one that could chew up a man and spit him out, literally and figuratively, the most. You'd be working with her, and there was no limit you could take it that she couldn't match you or exceed you. I mean, I'm this, obviously it's the wrong term, but I'll use it anyways because it's what we would use. She was unbreakable, right? Like, you could throw 10 dicks at her that were a foot long, and she would just laugh at you like, ha ha ha, is that all you got? I mean, she was just absolutely incredible. And I think I even said it in the book. Like, I used to think she was almost possessed because,
or the devil, yeah.
Yeah, because you'd be. I mean, there'd be times you'd be fucking around. I mean, literally, her eyes. She'd be orgasming. Her eyes would roll back. In the back of her head. So you just seeing these white eyes, and she'd just have, because she's German, she'd have this deep growl, and she'd just be like, "Fuck me," and just come out. You're just like, holy shit, you know, are you possessed or what? But she was absolutely absolutely incredible. And you know, it's something that I talk about in the book, where the thing about women like that is they are, you know, it's like she was literally like a Formula One racing car, but you had to know how to drive it. And if you didn't, the scene would be ho hum, because you know, there were C or D level performers that would work with Annette, and you would just get an average scene, because, you know, just because you have a Formula One race car, if you're not Michael Schumacher, you don't know how to drive it and take it there, right? So it's like, if you've only ever driven, you know, a little 4-cylinder Hyundai, you get in the race car, you're still driving it like it's a 4-cylinder Hyundai. And
growing up, Tara Patrick was one of my crushes. Very unique look, very different. Doesn't fit that blonde bombshell porn star niche that was out there, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on Tara, working with Tara, and any fond memories of performing with her?
Oh God. Well, I mean, her and me started around the same time. I think I did. I think I actually did her first photo shoot. And then, you know, we were friends. I mean, we hooked up off camera a couple times. Yeah, she was very beautiful. You know, she got popular. And then yeah.
Walk us through this next one, my last one. I'm going to show you for this one. You did a scene with BB Jones, correct?
Oh yeah, anytime.
What? Is she still active?
No.
What happened there?
She got married and had kids. That's all I remember.
How often is a money grab with these women, as far as in and out in 2-3 months?
Sorry, say that again?
How often is the money grab with a lot of these women, as far as, you know, they hop in for a couple scenes, make their money, and get on out?
Yeah, I mean, that is very common. But you know, just like with guys with longevity, girls having longevity is difficult as well. Like, I would say it's difficult for both, because you need a combination of factors, right? So if you're thinking about it from a female perspective, right? You need, if you're going to be a girl that's in the business for a long time, you need two things, right? You need to be, well, I'm going to say ideally two things, because there's a third category I can go into. You need to be extremely beautiful, right? Because, you know, I mean, let's look at it what it is. It's a shallow business from that perspective, right? It's like we're selling beauty. Now there are websites that sell, you know, girls that, you know, take 4 dicks in the ass too, right? That's a different category. But if you're looking very mainstream porno, you know, the first category is, well, okay, how beautiful are you? That's number one. And then it becomes, what is your mental fortitude? Right? So it's and that's the same thing that exists for the guys, right? Because you can have a young, you know, I remember, you know, I'm not going to mention his name, but when I got into the business in 1999, you know, because I started in 98 in Canada, but I moved, beginning of 1999, I moved to Los Angeles, and there was this one actor. He was, I think he was about like 5 years older than me, I think, because I think I was 22. He was like 27 at the time. But he was like the new hotshot actor, right? Like even when I started, you know, it's like, you know, this guy be on set, and they're like, oh, you know, this guy's on set, because I just started, so I was really new. this guy had been around for about a year and a half at that point, and he was getting kind of famous. But he within about 2 or 3 years, I blew past him. And that was mainly he couldn't keep it together mentally. So then he started, doing some bad scenes. When you're going to be in it for a long time, it's all about consistency, and the consistency of your mental state. It's not easy. I mean, if you look at, we could easily look at sports, right? Like, how many times have you seen? I mean, God, just remember this was 80s and 90s Buffalo Bills.
I'm a Bills fan, my guy.
Yeah, but 4 times go to the Super Bowl, come up 0.
After the first time, I fell in love with them, and most of them are in the Hall of Fame, and they play in Toronto, so be careful.
Yeah, but it's like you have some people that have all the talent in the world, but when it comes to that, they're just not clutch players, right? And then you take a Joe Montana or Tom Brady, where it's like, if it's clutch, they rise to the occasion, and you would see the same thing over and over. It's like, you'd have some people that were really good, but if the pressure got to be too much, then they would crumble, and it was really that mental state. So with women, for them to last a long time, they need to have that A-list beauty, but then they need to have the mental capacity. And so the mental capacity, it's being able to work day in, day out, be able to compartmentalize everything that happens, because you might have a bad day on set. Everybody does, right? You do porno long enough, like, you are going to have days that you absolutely hate your job. And it's, well, how do you park that, and how do you get up the next day and say, okay, I'm willing to push that aside, and today's a new day, right? And it's the same thing like an athlete. Like, if an athlete's not scoring, is he going to ruminate about that, or is he going to, park it? Or, like the goaltender lets in a bad goal. You look at the best goalies in the world, they're unflappable. They let in a bad goal, and you just, like, they don't get pissed off. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Okay, next.
Here's a part A and a part B question.
Mm-hmm.
Part A, we would like your thoughts on Miss Jones, what your experience was with her, how awesome she was, everything like that. And my second part question was, and I'm going to throw that sports analogy back your way. There are a lot of great NFL players that retired early, like a Jim Brown, before they had many, many more years of awesome potential. Can you kind of name a couple girls that did exactly that in the one career that really let you down because they quit at such, either at their peak or about to hit their peak?
Sure. With BB specifically, and I actually remember this because she was an extreme case of the so, for example, where I talk about the different pussies, I mean, she was one of the extreme on the velvety side. So like when you talk about, like, there are ones where you'd be like, oh, okay, like this is a prototype of that sort of continuum of pussy types. She's definitely there. She was fabulous. I mean, we got along. She was fun. She was just fun on set, bubbly, very I'm not sure, because I think she was from Arizona. She was somewhere in the South.
Yes. She's from Arizona, went to Arizona University.
Yeah, and she was just fun, like no drama. I never had any drama with her. So for me, I never had anything but good things to say about her. She was sweet to me. We always got along. Yeah. So for me, she was great. She was great.
So who are the top 3 girls that, like a Jim Brown, had so many more years ahead of them, and they decided, like, you know what, I'm getting married, or I'm not interested anymore, or something happened. Who are the top 3 girls that you performed with that pulled the plug too early and are no longer performing, that you really wish they kept going at it because they were so good at it? Throw me 3 names.
Okay. Well, I can definitely throw you 2. I'll have to work on the third one. First, I would say Sylvia Saint, by far. I mean, like if I was to look back at if we're just talking from sheer not personality or anything, but if we're talking just a sheer beauty standpoint, I would probably say she was the most attractive girl in my opinion, that I ever worked with. I mean, she was absolutely stunning. And she retired, man, early. I mean, I think she was, when she stopped working, maybe she was 23. I think she worked from maybe 18 to 23 and hung, I mean, and didn't work again past that. When I think about another one that definitely, in my opinion, obviously she went on to do bigger things, but Sasha Grey, I definitely enjoyed working with her. She got into, she's a big DJ or something.
She's in that entrepreneurship trend. I don't want to say transition because you're still involved with it, but you're just not involved as much as you were before.
Yeah.
It's not a full-time gig with you anymore. You're kind of at your schedule where you're your own boss and you can set what you do and where you do it, which is the dream, though.
Oh yeah. I mean, for me, this is my calling, and it was kind of funny in a lot of ways because when I was studying at my NLP school and I was doing all that, I was just doing it for myself, right? Like there was at that point, I didn't think I was going to be coaching men or doing anything like that. Like I was just like, oh, I just want to solve my own issues, right? And the whole time, I have these friends. They're like, "Oh man, you need to go into coaching. You'd be a great coach. You'd be a great coach." I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about?" I'm like, I'm just, I'm a self-development junkie, right? So, that was kind of interesting.
How did the ayahuasca experience differ from, let's just say, a dramatic situation? And you say to yourself, I'm changing, and for some reason you fall back in that abyss of not changing. How did that ayahuasca experience kind of not fall into that category, and why?
Well, okay, so let me preface this by asking, have you ever worked with ayahuasca or no?
I have not. I have listened to Joe Rogan and Robin Quivers on Howard Stern talk about her experience with ayahuasca. Marijuana is my love. I smoke marijuana. I'm an indica guy, but that's really all I do.
Well, yeah, I mean those two medicines couldn't be further apart from each other. Well, just to give you a brief kind of synopsis of it, in my experience, it'll definitely go down as one of the most profound things I've done. I mean, I've done it 7 times now. I've done 7 journeys. I will probably do another one again, though it's been 3 years now since my last one. I did my last one. I did in 2017 in Latvia. But it's such a personal journey. The ayahuasca is, and literally, I would say it's like 10,000 hours of psychotherapy condensed into 6 hours. Like if I was to just explain it in that fashion, right? But it's very individual. It really goes into showing you just about your life. So, my journeys with it were never, it's not like it was just showing you some random stuff, and the spirit actually talks to you. It's so visceral and surreal at the same time. Like, what you're experiencing, I'm sorry, there's no way that you can that you could lie to yourself and say the experience that you're going through at that time is not real. Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely.
So it's like in the sense of, you know, whatever fears it's showing you or whatever you're pushing through. I mean, whether they're visions or not, they are as real as fucking real can get at that moment, right? So that's where you're getting a lot of this deep change work, because your brain is not going to code it as anything but real. And I would argue at the same time, well, what's to say that it's not real, right? And you know, I'll just use light as an example. Like, you know, like if you look at what your eyes can actually see, it's like the tiniest little fragment of available light spectrums, right? You know, you got infrared, you got all these different types of light, but you can't see them. You know, we just know that they exist. So, you know, you take ayahuasca and suddenly you're open to all this information. You're getting all these experiences, and like I said, what's to say that it's not real?
Are you hesitant to leave the industry? Is there a plan in place to leave the industry? Is there a date in your head? Is there any hesitation to say goodbye? There's a lot of athletes out there. I'll use the sports analogy that, you know, Brett Favre is one that went a little bit too far, that maybe should have retired a year or two prior. So you didn't see that, you know, New York Jet Brett Favre. It wasn't good. It wasn't what Brett Favre was in Green Bay. Are you ever fearful of that?
Well, I'm very cognizant of it. So, is there a loose plan? Yeah. I would never say there's a firm plan. Probably, though, I would expect this would be my last year that I'll be in front of the camera.
Are you okay with that decision?
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%.
100%.
And because I've always said exactly what you were just touching on right now, right? And I've used for me, I always used to use the Wayne Gretzky reference.
Yep.
Versus Michael Jordan,
Yep.
right? And I'm sure now everybody's like, you know, watching the Jordan documentary, Last Dance, whatever. But, you know, when you think about Jordan, well, there was the Chicago Bulls Jordan, or there was the Washington Wizards Jordan, right? And probably most people would argue, and rightfully so, that, hey, he shouldn't have come out of retirement and played for the Washington, like, because that's not Jordan, right? It's like, okay, you know, now you got an okay player with bad knees, right? Whereas, you know, Wayne Gretzky, he was still, I think when he retired, he was what, top 10, top 5 in scoring. You know, he hadn't dropped off, you know, when he retired, because I think he retired in, was it 98, 99? I mean, he was still top 5 or top 10. And, you know, and he was like, no, I'm not going to be forced out. I'm going to go out on top. And that always really resonated with me. Like, I never wanted to be in a situation where you get kind of forced out because you're just not good enough anymore, right? Like, it's like, you want to go out when you're on top, you know, where you say, hey, you know, it's my decision. And I can look back in my career and say, hey, you know, everything that you get to see was still me, you know, at or close to my peak performance. Because, you know, I mean, I get why people hang on to things, but, you know, if you really think about it, like, the only constant in life is change, and you cannot hold on to the past. You can only ever look to the future.
I look at it a little bit to pro wrestling. I don't know if you're like, you know, if you know anything about pro wrestling, but you know, it's kind of seems like your situation is, there's a lot of pro wrestlers that work for companies for many, many years, the big companies, you know, and then all of a sudden they're a free agent. And when they're a free agent, they have the ability, especially right now with the boom of the internet and the boom of everything, pro wrestling's at its highest peak. There's competition now. It's crazy. But when they get to become a free agent, they can say, I can work in Japan, I can work in Mexico, I can work pretty much anywhere I want. Is that how it is with you right now in your line of work? And is there, pro wrestlers have a wish list as far as, I want to wrestle this guy in Japan. I want to wrestle this guy there. Do you have that currently, as far as a list of women that you want to end your career with?
No. There's no. Yeah, there's not really any women anymore from that perspective. I mean, now I'm based over here in Eastern Europe. I've been here for 5 years now. So I've had a lot of companies and directors in America that have asked me to go back there, but it hasn't really been anything that I've necessarily wanted to do. Not to say there haven't been some actresses in America the last 5 years that I would have loved to have worked with, but it's not really anything that.
So let's pretend let's pretend I'm a director.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a porn director, and I need to do a pitch to get you off your butt, light a fire on your butt, to come over to America and do a scene. What would that pitch be?
Oh God, that that would be. It wouldn't even be America. Actually, it would be a pitch to go somewhere else.
You're in a comfort zone right now because you're surrounded with beautiful, beautiful women right now. It's a good problem to have. It's like, why do I need to go elsewhere when everything's right here with me?
Just for an example, and this is pre-corona, and I'm sure it's going to happen post-corona. But I was scheduled to go actually to Japan to work because there was a company and a famous Japanese producer that wanted me to go out there, and I'd never been to Japan, and so that was definitely something that it was like, oh, well, I mean, I'll travel to Japan, of course, right? It's like, so for me, it would be someplace exotic that I haven't been. Like to get me good to go back to America, it's like, well, I've done that. But if suddenly you say, well, let's go to this exotic place, that exotic place, then yeah, you can get me on the plane.
What was the turning point for you to really decide to put pen to paper and write this awesome book?
It was like a two-part process, and I'm going to try and clarify it as best I can, because I was actually thinking about it, and I can actually, there's a part of it that I cannot describe, so I will do my best. But this started in about 2014 because I had two different lovers in Los Angeles at the time, and not necessarily at the same time, but during that year. And these were both civilians, right? And now, when I use that term, that's what we always have used in the porno industry. Like, if you're not in the porno industry, you are a civilian, right? That's just
so. Would a celebrity be considered a civilian?
If it was a celebrity, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you are not in porno, because there is a very sharp delineation. Because if you're not in porno, you cannot understand my job or anything about it, and your experience is totally different. So both these girls were civilians, and it was funny because they both were kind of saying the same thing. They said, well, I don't know what you're doing, but this is the greatest sex I've ever had in my life, and can you please teach my ex-boyfriend or my future boyfriends what you're doing, right? And I just kind of laughed at it, but it planted a seed in my brain. So when I was still living in Los Angeles, I actually sketched out all the topics that I would go into, and I started really analyzing, because I always did what I did, right? So I knew what worked, I knew why it worked, and this is what I was always doing. But I never sat there and really broken it down for the layman as to why it worked, right? So I basically, I sketched this whole thing out and never did anything with it. And then when I left Los Angeles to move overseas, that sketch pad was one of the few things I brought with me, and I didn't even know why at the time. I just thought, well, I don't know why I'm not throwing this out, but I'm going to take it with me. And I was over here working in Europe, and it's like anything when we're pushing into certain things that we might be fearful about, right? It's like at some point, for you to undergo change, the fear of missing out or not being where you want to be has to overcome the fear that you're in right now. And I just remember waking up one day, and I don't know what specifically happened, but something snapped. Like, that's what I remember, right? It's just something snapped in me, and I just sat. And I said, okay, I'm writing. And yeah, and then it became like a job. Like, I would wake up every morning, and it's like clock in, and I'd start writing. And then, next day I wake up, start writing. And I kept, doing that for over a year.
Is there a story in the book you held for a potential encore, and will there be an encore? And yeah.
Well, so to answer the question, I mean, there will be for sure. I have already 2 ebooks that I want to publish, where I'm just going deeper down the rabbit hole of certain topics that they are included in the book, but I really want to give the viewers and the clients a much deeper understanding of it, because when I did the book, I was trying to condense everything that they could possibly need to improve their sex lives, in a easily readable, entertaining fashion. But there are definitely topics that I'd like to go in on a much deeper level, so that someone can say, okay, now I really understand it, right? So in addition to the ebooks, then I'm also going to be doing online courses as well. And then, of course, there's my regular one-on-one coaching for clients that want a super deep experience.
What gets you motivated every day? What gets you up? What gets you to pop out of bed in the morning and motivated can be? Because the adrenaline rush, with all due respect, when you do that for that long on a consistent basis, you're on an all-time adrenaline rush, an all-time high. It's difficult to replace that, is it not?
Well, you see, yes and no, because now the rush for me, it's like the internal competition, right? So it's like, well, how can I be better today than I am yesterday, right? And so that encompasses everything. So, when I look at where I'm at now, it's like, well, how can I be a better coach today than I was yesterday? How can I write better material today than I did yesterday? How can I be a more effective marketer today than I was yesterday? So for me, it's the rush is still there. It's just channeled differently, right? But as soon as you find something that's fun, because for me, the coaching is fun, right? That is really, I think, the key, and I think it's what a lot of people end up missing out on, and I almost feel kind of sad for them in that sense, because now I'm on, let's call it the 3rd iteration of my life where I've had something fun to do, right? It's like, my first, quote unquote fun job was when I worked at the hardcore gym, right? Like, I thought that was the best job in the world, right? I just served chicken and rice to these guys that were all either bodybuilders, powerlifters, cops, drug dealers, right? But it was, that was a hardcore gym, right? You'd see people, in the bathroom shooting themselves up with steroids, and people would be puking in buckets, and nosebleeds from 500-pound squats. I mean, it was a crazy gym, but it was really fun, and I really enjoyed working there. And then in porno, when I got into porno, I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe they're going to pay me to do this. Like, this is really, really fun. And so now it's the same thing. It's like, okay, well now I'm writing these books, I write articles, I'm interacting with these guys, I'm helping solve their problems, and it's fun. It's like, because a lot of it is like what you and me are doing right now. It's like a big part of it is just having a conversation with these guys and going deep on where they're struggling. Because
you would make a great YouTuber.
Well, that is going to come next. It's like step by step.
Genuinely hosting your own show like I do, because you have such a unique perspective where you can interview your past co-stars, interview your current ones as well. I'd love to interview someone who's been in a relationship with you, because that's a fascinating story there to just.
Oh, I'm sure they'll have so much good dirt.
Because it seems like
they're going to say he was impossible.
It seems like women will fall in love with you very easy. Have you ever had to break a couple hearts and say, listen, like, the fucking's okay, but the relationship is not okay?
Yeah. There was definitely, there's been a lot of that. And that's what's really interesting, because I've had it more the opposite way, and it and I talk about it in the book, where I talk about the lock and key theory, right? Where I don't know if you got to read that section, but there are certain things about sexuality that can't be fixed, right? And it's hard to deal with as a person, and it's tough to hear, because if you look at conventional, let's call them sex counselors or gurus or whatever, what will they normally say? They say, well, you just need to listen to your partner better, you just need to communicate. I'm like, that's fucking horseshit, right? And I'll tell you why it's horseshit, because these people think that biological differences don't exist, which they do. Right. And when you're talking about sexual compatibility, so much of it is biological compatibility. Right. And this is what, it's almost like the big elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, because that would be politically incorrect, but it's so true. It's like, I've been in relationships with a girl that had, a very specific type of pussy that, like, it hurts for me personally. Right. And that was a really difficult relationship to let go of, because here I am, I'm in love with this person, I'm in love with their personality, everything, right? And I don't want to fuck them. Now that'll mess up your relationship a lot.
There's millions and millions of men fall in love with porn stars, female and male porn stars, every day. How difficult was it for you to not fall in love with a co-star who looks perfection?
Well, for me, I think that's really the process of growing. Like, I'm now 43, right? And I started in the porno business when I was 21. What the 21-year-old me thought was good is not what the 43-year-old me thinks is good today, if that makes sense. Like, you definitely start looking for other qualities in addition, and you are really quick to dismiss people if they don't have them, right? So, there would definitely be some girls in my 20s that I would date that I would never even think of dating today, mainly because just where I'm at in my life, they have nothing to offer me.
I have a question in the chat. Would he have liked to work with Ginger Lynn in her heyday?
Oh, in her heyday, sure. I was actually, this was God, I can't remember what year it was. She did a comeback, definitely in the 2000s, and I was asked to work in it, and I wasn't available at the time, so I never worked with her, but I was asked to do it. I can't remember the name of the movie though. It was I believe it was something that Vivid put out.
So let's talk about that final scene because I'm fascinated about it. You know, I look at, you know, you look at like the memorable last games of a lot of these athletes. I'm going to give you the wish. I'm going to give you the chance to pick your dream co-star that's presently alive, and then I want you to pick your dream co-star. I know you mentioned one already, besides Jenna Jameson. Who would have been your dream co-star to close out your last scene with from the past, and who's the one right now currently? If you had an empty notebook and you said, you know what, Eric, put down a first and last name and let's get this done. Who's your last? Who do you want to go out with on a bang? Pardon pun.
Okay, well, see, it's tough because I'd have to really think. I'd have to really think about present day. So give me a second on that. In the past, 100% Anita Blonde, 100%. That to go out on that would have been, you know, that's raising the Stanley Cup right there, metaphorically speaking. If we're thinking about current, because it would probably, when I think about current, it would probably be someone in America, and trying to think who might fit the bill on that one. Man. Well, if we'll go with Europe since I'm here and that's what I know. If I was thinking Europe, then probably have to say the girls here. Probably Leah Silver.
Is there a society or a brotherhood or a sisterhood or camaraderie as far as co-stars is concerned? You know, off scene, is there kind of like a family-like environment in this industry, or is it cutthroat beyond belief?
Well, okay, so let me unpack that because it's both. It is both. Now, it's so. For example, for me, one of the things, you know, and actually, you know, there's one, my producer friend Dave, he used to always joke about it because, you know, with me, I was always the lone wolf, sort of. Like I never hardly ever associated with porno people, just because it just didn't hold any value for me in that sense, right? So you know, I have only a couple friends in porno. Generally, I don't have any. You know, but there's a couple, but not many. Most people, though, I would say they very much do become like porno family in that sense, where all their friends are fellow porno actors, actresses. So there can be a lot of camaraderie, but there's also a ton of backstabbing, especially amongst the women. But the guys too. I mean, the guys, when you get to the top level, either you view yourselves as equals and you get along, or you view yourselves as equals and you are hyper competitive and dislike each other. And I've been on both sides of that with different guys. So, but I would say the women are worse than the guys 100%. You know, and porno is so interesting because, you know, I've always said this. I mean, it is glorified high school times 1,000 ad money, right? So however bad you think hierarchies and stuff were in high school, they are 1,000 times worse in the porno business because now you've got money added to it, right? And you know, and everybody does slide into the hierarchy, and once you're there, it's really tough to move your way out, right? It's like, you know, and it just happens. Like I, you know, and we would always talk about it, you know, A list, B list, C list, right? And, you know, you would have girls, like I remember, I think this was in 2000. You know, I was doing a lot of movies for Vivid at the time. That's when I did that Reverse Gangbang. I did it for them. And at that time, you know, Vivid then was, you know, arguably the biggest company. And they had a lot of, you know, the prettiest girls, and they were all under exclusive contract. So they had their Vivid Girl roster. And I remember specifically the production manager pulled me aside one day and she says, you know, you are the only guy that is on every girl's yes list. Because she actually had a list in her office, and she'd have every Vivid girl's name, and that girl specifically, because, you know, they were the top A-list girls, and they would have a list of 5 guys that they would fuck, and that was it. Because they were like, nope, I only work with these top A-list guys. I don't work with anybody else. And that was it. And yeah,
how honored is that? Because the one thing I got from a lot of your films is, you know, rough sex, and that can get borderline. I mean, injuries could occur. You know, it gets close to borderline problematic, let's just say, because it's rough sex, you know. Yet so many of these women trust you and recommend you and feel safe with you, but I don't want to say you don't work the safe style, but you don't work the safe style because of the rough sex. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. But there, you know, that is also the thing, is that, you know, when you're watching an edited product, you're not watching the conversation that I have with them beforehand. You're not watching between every break where it's like, hey, you know, is everything okay? Blah, blah, you know, like people aren't getting any of that, right? And then, you know, because there's an understanding between, you know, actors, actresses, you know, especially the really professional ones. It's like, okay, and I think it's on both sides, right? Because, you know, I've had girls that'll do some crazy, you know, because, you know, maybe the girl is famous for doing some crazy sort of sloppy, rough blowjob thing that the girl does, right? Personally, I can't stand it because it hurts, and, you know, teeth, you get cut. But I also do understand. I'm like, well, you know, I know why she's doing it, because I'm like, well, we're creating a visual performance art. I get it. Like, so I'm not, you know, I don't like that she's doing it. I understand that she's doing it, and I agree with her doing it, if that makes sense. You know, so you're kind of doing a dance with certain things throughout a scene as well, right? Where it's like, okay, you know, if this was in my personal life, I maybe wouldn't go quite as hard, but we are creating a visual product for the viewing public, and they know it, I know it, and we're staying on that line where it's like, okay, it's not going too far, but we're keeping it on an elevated level that, you know, obviously keeps the viewer really interested in it. So,
how challenging is it now in your new with this sex coach to unbreak the broken?
What do you mean unbreak the broken? Can you?
Well, let's go with, you know, a lot of men are depressed, and it's very difficult getting those men out of depression. They rely on sex pills like Viagra or Rhino, all these off the market dangerous things. And they may look into a book like yours as, you know what, I'm going to give it a go, but I don't have much faith. How difficult is it for that wall to be broken for you to get through to these people, to kind of pick them up from their abyss of depression, whether it's a breakup, whatever it could be? Confidence, is something that the majority of people are lacking. The communication skills and confidence, in my opinion, are two major things that we're lacking right now in 2020. And confidence is something that needs to be built up and acquired over multiple years, in my opinion. It's not just a snap of a finger. Hey, I'm gonna feel this way, and you feel that way. I think a good amount of the people that I think that should be the target of this book are those people that need that confidence built in them and motivation, where they look at someone who has slept with the amount of women you slept with, and you're your own entrepreneur. You're traveling. You're a book author. You're waiting for the release in October coming up. It's a good path for someone to want to follow, because you're still active in the industry, but you're your own boss, which again is another appealing thing to do. But you're not hitting porn stars. You're hitting average Joes like me. Mm-hmm. How challenging is it, in your opinion, to change the way these people think and get confidence back in them, whether it's from a female perspective or a male perspective?
Well, so with all the people that I've worked with and coached this last year, for a lot of it, it actually hasn't been as difficult as you would think, because some of the ideas that I present to them, they've just never even thought about it that way. And one of the things that I learned, especially when I was going through my NLP studies and then doing the ayahuasca, like, often changes in your belief system can happen overnight, right? Like, let's just use for an example, like maybe I'll just take some random sort of stuff that's in the news, right? So right now, let's say you've got riots, you've got this, you've got that, right? And we show you one video footage of an event from one perspective, right? And you'll say, oh, well, that's what happened, right? But then suddenly I show you a camera from a totally different perspective that shows something way different. And what happens? Like, instantly, your belief system about everything that happened right then and there changes, and it's very quick, right? It's like, oh, now I see it all, right? And it's the same thing with your sexuality, right? And your viewpoint on sexuality. Like, you can come at it from a different angle, show the client, like, hey, what about this? And instantly, your belief systems about what you were believing, it shatters, like, instantly, where it's like, oh my God, I never saw it from that perspective. I never saw it this way, right? And so I found there are some things that can be changed, and changed quite rapidly. Now, confidence is that takes time. But if you think about confidence, right? Like, when I think about it, it's like, well, what is confidence? It's usually some sort of belief in yourself, knowledge plus skill sets, right? It's like, well, why aren't we confident in something? Well, because usually we don't believe we can do it, and we don't know how to do it, right? So if you can start giving someone actual practical information, right, that they can use, and they believe it, then they can fast track their way to confidence. It's like, let's just say, for example, I'm not comfortable throwing a football, right? But I happen to have Tom Brady as my neighbor. He says, hey, I'm gonna teach you how to throw a football, right? Well, he's gonna be showing me exactly how he does it, right? So it's like, now I'm learning exact skills that I know the best guy in the world does and uses. So what that does is that then instills me the belief that what he is saying is true, right? So not only do I have that belief structure where it's like, okay, I know this will work, right? But then I have him giving me the knowledge of the how-to. So then I can have those two things together and start to build my own confidence. Because I'm like, okay, well, from a biomechanics standpoint, now I know how to throw the football. Doesn't mean I'm going to throw it good. Like I still need to practice, but at least now I know what are the steps, right? And I can say, well, okay, well, I know he's at the top of his field in what he is doing. So now internally, I can alter my belief structure and say, okay, I can believe that this is true and that this will work. Therefore, I'm willing to put in the effort to practice and keep doing what he showed me, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the confidence boost. In my personal life, whenever there's depressed moments, I think a confidence booster is making my wife come. That makes me feel fucking amazing. It's like you get a fresh haircut, you feel like Brad Pitt. You know, making a female come, you feel accomplished. You feel awesome. It's a confidence boost to you. How much of a challenge is it for you to get that through your clients to stay focused? It's pretty much a football analogy, but stay focused on the end zone.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? But with a lot of them, it's not even that they're not focused. They just don't know what to focus on, you know? So, like I said, it's literally like they don't know how to throw a football, but they've never even been given game tape of how to do it, right? So that's really where you get a problem, where you get this complete lack of sexual education, because like I'll go through my specific protocol with eating pussy, right? And I'll teach that to my clients. Well, you can't learn that from watching a porno movie, because first of all, when we have to do it for a porno movie, we're not doing it to make the girl feel good.
But I will say,
you have to cheat way open. Like, it's just impossible. Like, if you're actually going to do it, you're not going to see anything.
I have watched a lot of your work, and I will say, and I'm emulating you. Mm-hmm. You have a title called "Follow the Compass." Yep. You too, before reading the book, before reading that excerpt, one thing I noticed about you and your scenes is you bring a lot of attention to that clitoris, and I use that. I emulate that approach. So you're damn right you can learn from watching you in the films, because that's something that I kind of got motivated by, how focused you were on that clit, because the clit is almost like the first down. If you get a first down, you can move on to keep on moving on, but without that first down, you're not going to score.
Well, 100% exactly. But in the business, I was literally the only one doing it, right? And I would fight with producers a lot of times, because when I'd be working with a girl, I'd be doing that to get them off, to get them to forget about the camera being in the room and all of that. Now, when you watch when I am doing it, right, I'm not showing anything to the camera, because when you're actually doing the proper techniques, the camera's going to see nothing. So whenever you see one of those, tight shots where it's like you can see the guy licking the pussy, I mean, like literally, like we have our face pressed as close to the thigh, and the tongue is so outstretched, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it's all visual, and you can't get a girl off that way. But 100%, the clit is your compass, and that's the big thing that I talk about, because if you really want to, first of all, lower your anxiety, right? Well, getting that win, man, that takes all the pressure off you in the world, right? And it's so accessible for all men. Like, you could be, kind of nervous, with a girl, right? But, if your pussy and skills are on point and you get her off, okay, let's just go worst case scenario, right? Let's go worst case scenario, saying that no matter what, your adrenaline was too high, you couldn't battle it back, you couldn't get a hard on that day, right? But you made her come 5 times with your tongue, dude, you're getting a free pass. Like she will be like, okay, you didn't, well, yeah, I'm okay. We can try next time, right? Like that, you know, it's the same analogy. Like, you know, if you're a guy and you know, let's just say maybe your girl's on her period and she doesn't want to have sex, but she'll say, no, I'll totally give you a blowjob, right? And you blowjob's finished, you orgasm. Are you really sitting there thinking like, oh man, like I'm so distraught that we didn't have sex? No, you're like, fine, I got off, we're good, right? So, so most women, like if it's a one-time thing, they're giving you a free pass if you deliver the goods in that arena, right? The girls that I've met, you know, their gripe, of course, is, you know, okay, you don't, number one, you don't get them off, then you don't get it up, or then, you know, you got it up and you came in 20 seconds and they didn't get off. Then, yeah, they're going to call another guy. And I've known lots of girls that, you know, they're pretty abrupt about that too.
Do you kind of consider yourself a one percenter from the male actor category when it comes to how almost robotic you are with making sure you put the female first? Because you know you're going to come. Let's put the female first and focus on that, because it seems like the majority of male actors, their main goal was coming and, you know, that's it, you know, and it was more about making them come as opposed to let's set the scene, set the table, get everything where it needs to, you know, make them come multiple times so I can come, you know, once or twice kind of deal.
Well, I mean, I would definitely put myself as a one percenter just in all ways of the porno industry, because, you know, when I look at it, I just didn't fit the mold, so to speak, in so many different ways, right? Which you know, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just, you know, me personally, like I said, one of the producers I used to work for, he would joke if I ever showed up to a porno event, right? Because I hardly ever would go to events, right? So if I showed up, he was like, "Oh my God, you know, what are you doing here?" Right? You know, because I'm more of an introvert by nature, and it's just the way I've always been. So, and you know, if yeah, I just I wouldn't associate with a ton of people. So from that perspective, I was always kind of looked at as a, you know, it's like, well, here he is, he's one of the top guys in the world, and at the same time, he doesn't like to go to events or do anything social that so many of these people want, because they want the attention, they want this. And I was like, no, I'm good. Right.
So what's your 5-year goal? Where are you right now in 5 years? You know, like clearly, I think the end of this year you're done with porn, correct?
Yeah, I mean, 5-year goal. You want me to go through all of it, because I do have it all mapped out.
Sure, let's go. I have a few.
Well, living wise, I'll be living in Ukraine. I love that country. I'm half Ukrainian, you know, so my goal will to be to either live in Kiev or outside of there, you know. And then next up, family. Like I've known for a couple of years that I wanted to have kids, so that will be a focus. Will be that. And then just building my business, building my brand, and you know, spreading the message to all these guys. So, you know, showing them that it can get better, and that, you know, you can be the best version of yourself in the bedroom as you possibly can be. You know, it's you know, I know we're beating sports analogies to death, but, you know, for example, like I may never be able to hit a baseball like Barry Bonds, because, I mean, that is genetic, you know, like specialty, right? It's like, you know, I wouldn't have the exact fast twitch fibers. Like there's just, you know, so many things go into making somebody that can do that on that ultimate elite level, and I probably don't impress
To be
them.
fair, to be fair, find me a guy who would rather hit 4,000 home runs than fuck 4,000 women.
True, true. But the analogy that I'm going at is, you know, if Barry taught me how to hit a baseball, I guarantee he could teach me to hit it as best as my personal ability could be. And that's what I'm trying to, you know, teach these guys is, okay, you may never be on the level that I'm at, right? But you can be the highest level that you could ever possibly be. And, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what we all want. It's like we want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. You know, I think everybody owes it to themselves to do that, right? Because, you know, if you're not loving yourself to where you actually want the best for yourself, then what are you doing?
Let's talk about the book one more time, and I'm going to wrap it up because I can talk to you for hours. Literally, I'm going to have you back on for part 2.
Yeah, let's do it, man. This was awesome.
I could rock with you for hours, honestly. Let's talk about the book one more time. Why should the person listening to this get your book? And what are they in store for, and what do they have to look forward to with Unleash Your Sexual Superpowers, a porn star's guide to sexual mastery?
Well, the reason I would say is number one, this is the boots on the ground, practical, tested, 5,000 women information booklet that you could never find anywhere else, right? Like, for me, I wrote the book as the ultimate how-to, and it's written in very, I'm sure you can attest to this because you read it. You know, I wrote it as a conversation, right? So it's very easy to understand. You know, I'm not, it's very applicable. It's very practical. You know, it's full of knowledge that you can take today and actionably make your life and your sex life better, and where you can actually improve. I mean, when you look at so many sex books and guides out there, you know, they will keep the information up in the clouds, right? So it's like almost like they're talking on some sort of esoteric level. It's like, well, that's great, but that practically is telling the guy absolutely fuck all on what he actually needs to do. And with this, it's like, no, man, here's what you got to do. Here's why it works. And here is how, you know? So for me, the reason to get it is like, well, yeah, you want actionable, real world knowledge that actually really works, rather than, you know, listening to some of these self-professed gurus where, I mean, some of the stuff they talk about, it's nonsensical. It's like, you've never fucked, you know, 5 people in your life, but you're magically giving sex advice to all these people that's not based in any sort of practical reality, certainly from my perspective. So
yeah, that was my question, is like, how challenging is the re-education process for you with what you've seen and read out there that you've kind of gotten disgusted with? And you know, you mentioned the 5 people slept with, as far as them not being an expert, pretending to be an expert, getting attention for being a so-called expert. Is it frustrating to you, A? And B, how challenging is it to reprogram people's minds and re-educate them on how it really is?
Well, you know, it's challenging and it's not, right? It's funny. I was I was at a Canada Day picnic just a couple days ago, and I was talking to this older lady there, and you know, she was asking me, you know, about what I do, and I said, well, you know, I'm a coach and author, and so we went into it, right? And she goes, oh, porn star, blah, blah. She's talking about the book, and then she asked me, she goes, well, you know, did you so how many women did you interview for the book? I said, well, none. She goes, well, why wouldn't you want a woman's opinion? I said, well, what value would that have been? Like, from the perspective of, so if I ask a woman and I say, well, give me your opinions on sex, and I said, well, the only one that would have any sort of value to the conversation, right? I'm like, is if she had had the amount of experience that I've had, right? Because you have to look at it from two different angles, right? There's the one angle where it's like, okay, I'm a penis owner, right? But lots of guys are penis owners. We all are, right? But I've had to go through a different journey of using mine. So I think there's a lot of things that I've learned about how they work that most guys have never thought of because they've never been put in that position. So I intimately understand my body. Conversely, I have slept with so many women that now, even though I'm not a woman, I do intimately understand how their body works, right? As best as I can. For not being a woman, I've probably gone as far as you can to understanding how a woman's body works. Now let's flip that in reverse. You have these women, because especially sex advice for men seems to be coming from all women. And, it's like, well, how are you going to explain to a man how his dick works when, first of all, have you seen 10 dicks in your life? Like, what kind of sample size is that to actually understand how they work? It is none. I don't think you could start to really put the patterns together, because they are subtle patterns. But then once you see them, like, you can see them everywhere. But I Jesus, I think, you probably got to be with, let's call it 1,000 people before you start to see those patterns, right?
I could be wrong, but it seems like you're not, or we're not, a fan of the VR porn because it doesn't show how the bread's being, baked, essentially, and that's very important when you watch a scene. Am I wrong with that analogy?
Explain what you mean specifically.
Well, like the clitoris, the amount of work you put in with the hands.
Oh yeah. Well,
those are key things that virtual reality won't show. Those I like to call them Easter eggs in porn. Those are the Easter eggs in porn that need to be focused on more. VR doesn't show any of that, correct?
Well, yeah, VR is the most. I mean, I've done only a handful of VR things, but it is the most sterile environment you could possibly imagine. Like, there's no fun, there's no nothing for anybody, because there's no interaction. It's like, as the guy, I have to be completely silent. You can do nothing to actually get the girl off. It is hyper sterile porn with no motion.
How excited were you when the GoPros first came out? And it was like, holy shit, we could put those on our heads, we could put those on our bodies, we can put them anywhere.
The only thing that I think was cool about the GoPro was, when I was producing movies back in the day, I always liked shooting stuff that was underwater. I found something incredibly sexy about it. And I think it actually came from, there was a porn movie when I was a kid that I watched, and I believe it was, now that I come to think of it, I believe it was Miami Spice. And, these girls do this like underwater blowjob on, I think it may have been Randy West or somebody. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But they're diving underneath, but, the camera's underwater. And I was like, oh, that's super sexy. And when I was producing movies, I actually had a underwater housing for one of my big Sony cameras, right? But, putting that thing underwater, I mean, it was a pain in the ass. And, when GoPros came out, I mean, it's like, oh God, you've got this, this little thing that's the size of a cigarette box, and you can put it in a waterproof case, and boom, there you go. You can shoot everything cool, 4K underwater. Just from that standpoint, it made anything like that logistically super easy.
Let everybody know where they can find you. I'm a huge fan of your Instagram. Let everyone know where they can find you on the web.
Yeah, so if they go to www.erikeverhard.com, that's ErikEverhard, there you can find links to my private free Facebook group, links to buy the book, also links to email me for one-on-one coaching, as well. You can find me on Instagram at Erik Everhard Official. That's the handle there.
I literally went through half my questions. You have an open door invite to please come back on.
Oh yeah, let's do it again, man.
I would absolutely love you on again. I want to thank you so much for being how charitable you have been. Anything you want to say last to all your fans? Actually, I do want to get one last question. The stalkers. Sure. I always hear female porn stars deal with the stalkers a lot. Have you ever had to deal with the stalkers?
Yes, and it was not fun.
Is it a big reason why you left you left the U.S. and kind of went into a country where they're kind of your rules, your safety net, or no?
No. That was completely based off of an ayahuasca journey that I had. So awesome. Literally, this was my last ayahuasca journey in the States. It showed me some visions, told me to move, and I took the medicine literally. And within 2 months, I'd sold all my possessions, took my dog, and got on a plane.
Are there any famous women on that list? Movie stars, actresses.
Oh, no, not famous. But no, the stalking thing, that was, oh God, that was horrible. So I've definitely experienced it, from having a female fan stalk me, and it's creepy.
Have you ever had a co-star after the scene kind of fall in love with you and stalk you?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had those girls, but it was never out of hand. I mean, because eventually I think they're just like, okay, he's not interested. So I never had a female co-star. I've had them get maybe butthurt or whatever because I didn't reciprocate, but it was never like on a psycho stalker level. I never had that. That I had with one civilian fan that I slept with, and I would never do that again. That was bad news.
I want to thank you again for your time. Open door invite to come back on, Mitch. There's so much more we can talk about. I'd love to have you on again. I want everyone to go and get the book, Amazon.com. Unleash your, everyone just go unleash your sexual superpowers, Amazon.com. Go check the book. Again, is there any final message you want to say out to all your fans?
Well, just that, wherever you're at right now, you can get to another level, right? Like it, whatever level of pain, whatever level of suffering, it doesn't need to stay that way. And, just like the book says, I mean, you can unleash your sexual superpowers. You just have to get in the mindset that you're going to do it and you can make it happen.
All right. Perfect way to end on that.